Chapter 49-52. Although Xiao Hua's heart was filled with disdain, he still respected Bai Fei's choice. After all, there were hundreds of things in the world, and there were tens of thousands of people. It was impossible to expect others to consider others as much as oneself. It was already quite good that Bai Fei did not do evil things. Therefore, Xiao Hua cautiously transmitted his voice. Then what benefits does fellow Daoist Bai want? The benefits this Bai wants. I'm afraid you can't give me. Bai Fei replied proudly. Then how do you and I work together? Xiao Hua asked somewhat apprehensively. As the two of them were exchanging voice transmissions, Bai Junfeng suddenly got up and looked at Xiao Hua and Bai Fei. He nodded apologetically and left in a hurry. Bai Fei looked at Bai Junfeng's back and sent a sound transmission. Daoist Master Xiao, I'm guessing that after Bai Junfeng returns, he will definitely receive another message from the alliance leader of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance, requesting us to continue teleporting. Moreover, he will definitely teleport to a place controlled by the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Do you believe me? Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. He looked at the door of the quiet room, then looked at Yi Yun and the others. He shook his head slightly. How is this possible? We just arrived at Border City according to the Alliance Master's message, and we haven't even left the teleportation formation yet. How can we teleport again? I don't believe it. Alright, go ahead and watch. Bai Fei said confidently, as for the alliance you mentioned, this Bai agrees in principle. As for the benefits, this Bai will tell you when we meet. The reason I'm telling you this now is to let you know that joining hands with me is the best decision you've ever made in your life. How can this guy be so arrogant? Seeing Bai Fei like this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be even more surprised. In fact, he already suspected that this Xiao is Xiao Hua in his heart, but he didn't directly ask. Perhaps he wants to distance himself from this Xiao, and doesn't want this Zhao's previous kindness to become a fetter, but he should also understand that this Zhao's cultivation is definitely not inferior to his. Could it be that he still had something to rely on? What kind of shocking fortuitous encounter did Bai Fei have in the past few hundred years? Seeing Xiao Hua pondering, Bai Fei smiled faintly and said no more. After a while, Xiao Hua finally nodded and said, Alright, I will wait and see. It was unknown whether it was Bai Fei's foresight or Bai Junfeng's insistence on cooperating with Bai Fei, but just as Xiao Hua finished speaking, Bai Junfeng came in from outside the quiet room. His sweaty face was filled with apologies. Bai Junfeng bowed to Xiao Hua and Bai Fei in embarrassment. Seniors, I'm truly sorry. This junior just left, because there was a commotion in the communication Dharma artifact. This junior has already received the Alliance leader's order, requesting us to immediately set off. We cannot stay anywhere else and must head directly to Worry-Free Manor. Bai Fei smiled slightly. He glanced at Xiao Hua and said, I don't care. Moreover, looking at Daoist Xiao, you should be fine as well. We'll have to see if Miss Yi and the others can continue to teleport. After Yi Yun and the others heard this, they had already opened their eyes. They looked at Bai Junfeng in confusion. Yu Biqiong's eyes revealed a look of understanding. She then said, Junior Sister Ye's situation is not good. Senior Brother Bai, can you wait for a while? Bai Junfeng smiled and said, Of course, we can wait for a while. Moreover, I've already asked the disciples of Border City. Although there are dozens of teleportation channels to Worry-Free Manor, they are not connected together. Most of the time, we still have to use flying shuttles. Moreover, these teleportation channels are not very far away. I believe that Junior Sister Yi will be fine after resting. That's good. Yu Biqiong looked at Gao Zhuang, who had been silent all this time, and asked, Senior Brother Kuang? I'm fine. Gao Zhuang waved his hand. Alright, then let's rest for another hour. Bai Fei made the final decision. Yi Yun was a little embarrassed and said, I've delayed everyone. It's fine, it's fine. Bai Fei's eyes revealed tenderness and said, Miss Yi, this is probably an old injury. You need to cultivate more. Sigh. Yi Yun sighed. She didn't say anything else and closed her eyes to adjust her breathing. After an hour, Bai Junfeng took Xiaohua and the others to the worry-free manor. In the next few months, just as Bai Junfeng said, and just as Bai Fei expected, none of the teleportation channels were in big cities. Moreover, the locations of the teleportation channels were relatively remote. The distance between the teleportation channels was sometimes relatively long. It was very common to fly for more than 10 days by flying shuttles. Summer turned to autumn, and winter gradually approached. The fallen leaves in the nearby mountains had already turned yellow, and the unknown wild fruits were also gradually rotting. In the distance, a mountain peak that wasn't too tall appeared on the horizon amidst the fiery red. Seniors. Seeing the fiery red, Bai Junfeng's heart finally relaxed. He raised his hand and pointed, and said with a smile, "This is the worry-free manor. I'm afraid that we're the first batch of disciples to arrive at the manor." He. Bai Fei had already become the leader. He smiled and said, "We flew east and west, and the teleportation channels we passed through didn't seem to be in a straight line. In the middle, we used flying shuttles to fly for so long, and you're actually the first batch?" Bai Junfeng, how many batches of disciples did your Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance send out? Bai Junfeng's face didn't show any embarrassment. He replied, "I'll let seniors know." In order to avoid unnecessary trouble and for our safety, Junior had no choice but to rack his brains to find a stable teleportation route. I didn't discuss it with seniors before, so I hope seniors can understand. It's fine. Xiaohua was originally sitting cross-legged on the flying shuttles, modifying the primordial spirit cultivation technique. At this time, he waved his hand and said, "Anyway, we're not familiar with the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance." Through these few months of understanding, Bai Junfeng knew that Xiaohua was the easiest to talk to. Hearing Xiaohua's words, the corner of his mouth rose into a smile. However, just as his smile appeared, rumble. A loud thunderclap sounded from the 9 heavens. Then, in the space of hundreds of thousands of miles, hundreds of millions of lightning bolts were born. These lightning bolts turned into pearls in the thunder, and a will that swept through the heaven and earth like a silver river suddenly fell from the sky, enveloping the entire heaven and earth. Everything came to a standstill in the presence of this will. Seeing the familiar scene, Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He looked up at the sky in disbelief, where the lightning had turned into multicolored clouds. He wondered in his heart, what's wrong with the Tao Sovereign? Could it be that he's thinking of me again? Following Xiaohua's surprise, in the sky, beyond the 9 heavens, an old man with a simple appearance, wearing an 8-trigram robe and a Tao crown, stepped on a green lotus and walked down step by step. Tao ancestor? The old man's indomitable figure appeared. When Xiaohua's gaze fell on that unclear appearance, although the old man's eyes were tightly closed and did not open, an inconceivable thought was born in Xiaohua's heart. This is the Tao ancestor? The Tao ancestor walked down from the 9 heavens, endless multicolored light flashing around his body. Within the multicolored light, there were also endless illusions. Some were men plowing and women weaving, some were moving mountains and creating seas, and so on. Ethereal immortal music came out from these illusions. No, that's not right. As soon as the Tao ancestor thought of this, Xiaohua's gaze once again glanced at the old man's flickering appearance. Inadvertently, an extremely familiar face flashed past Xiaohua's mind. Xiaohua couldn't help but scream madly in his heart, this is lousy. The saint who disappeared. Why is he here? Unfortunately, this Tao ancestor's phantom was the will of heaven and earth. He didn't answer Xiaohua's exclamation. However, this Tao ancestor was the same as the previous Tao sovereign. His originally closed eyes opened, and 2 rays of light flashed from his eyes. One was as black as the night, and the other was as white as the day. The 2 rays of light fell on Xiaohua's body. The Tao ancestor opened his mouth, and a voice like the collapse of mountains and earth rang out, "Good." Along with this voice, the Tao ancestor raised his hand and grabbed, and a horsetail whisk appeared. The horsetail whisk swept towards the sky, and the sky that was originally filled with thunder and lightning instantly became clear. Thousands of stars, as well as the sun and moon, appeared. As the horsetail whisk swept past, thousands of stars fell into the Buddha's dust, and billions of starlight settled in one place. Then, the Tao ancestor opened his mouth, and with a puff, the sun, moon, and stars, even heaven and earth fell into it, condensing into a seed of light and shadow. Tao seed? Xiao Hua was stunned. This light and shadow was so familiar, it was exactly the same as the Tao seed bestowed by the Tao's sovereign before. Just as Xiao Hua was stunned, the Tao ancestor raised his right hand and pointed at the Tao seed. Rumble. Thousands of inexplicable thunder sounds came from the void, and the profound mysteries of heaven and earth were born and fell into the Tao seed. The entire world was distorted by the profound mysteries. Then, the Tao ancestor flicked his middle finger, and the Tao seed streaked across space and time. The seed that seemed to be bigger than the sky turned into the size of a thumb and fell towards Xiao Hua's head. It was exactly the same as when the Tao's sovereign's Tao seed fell. Moreover, as the light and shadow of the seed fell, Xiao Hua's physical body also began to fade and melt in this light and shadow, and finally turned into an existence of lines. However, it was slightly different from the last time the Tao seed fell. At this time, in Xiao Hua's lower dantian, the scattered nascent soul that had already obtained the Tao seed did not turn into lines. Instead, the scattered nascent soul's figure became more and more plump, and it became more and more spirited. Moreover, when the light and shadow of the Tao seed fell into the scattered nascent soul's body, another purple light brought along the light and shadow of the other Tao seed to contend with the light and shadow of the Tao seed. Not good. Seeing this, Xiao Hua was shocked. Could it be that these two Tao seeds are not of the same origin? They can't be fused together. However, just as this thought appeared in Xiao Hua's mind, Xiao Hua was even more stunned, and an extremely bad idea appeared in his mind. Previously, this Xiao said that other people's hearts are not content, like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, but this Xiao is really not content, right? For ordinary cultivators, no, ordinary immortals to obtain a Tao seed is already an unparalleled immortal fate. Previously, when this Xiao obtained a Tao seed, my scattered nascent soul almost collapsed and could not survive. If there is another Tao seed, how can this Xiao's scattered nascent soul bear it? Needless to say, these two Tao seeds don't seem to be able to fuse together. If they are placed in the same scattered nascent soul, won't my scattered nascent soul immediately collapse? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4953. But if the scattered nascent souls can't do it, which of the other 100 or so scattered nascent souls can succeed? Xiao Hua hurriedly looked at the other scattered nascent souls. However, these scattered nascent souls were surrounded by purple light. They formed a capital heaven star formation with the starry sky scattered nascent souls to protect the Taoist seed bestowed by the Taoist master. How could they bear the Taoist seed of the Taoist ancestor? Taoist ancestor, Taoist ancestor. Xiao Hua felt bitter in his heart. If he could speak, he would have cried, "You don't have to be so nice to me, do you?" Unfortunately, the Taoist ancestor couldn't hear Xiao Hua's thoughts. The Taoist seed still fell. When 3,000 folds appeared on the seed, the bodies of Xiao Hua and his doppelgangers that hadn't fully recovered condensed again. The capital heaven star formation formed by the starry sky scattered nascent souls and the hundreds of scattered nascent souls showed signs of collapse. Damn it. Xiao Hua was anxious. Taoist ancestor, you're not being nice to me, you're killing me. You. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was suddenly startled and came to a realization. Damn it, this Xiao understands now. Previously, I gave the spirit root selection method and part of the nascent soul cultivation method to the Chanhe sect. The Chanhe sect sent it to the Tao Alliance through the fallen celestial sect. The Tao Alliance then issued an order that all the sects under the Tao Alliance must use their spirit roots to select their disciples and cultivate using the spirit root cultivation method. The Taoist Alliance is a Taoist sect disciple who cultivates the nascent soul. Therefore, the Taoist master appeared and thanked me for saving the Taoist Alliance with the Taoist seed of the Taoist sect. A few months ago, I brought the spiritual root selection method to the Heavenly Alliance. Even before I arrived, Banished King also sent the spiritual root selection method to the Heavenly Alliance. In Tong Lake City, I even publicized the primordial spirit cultivation method to the public and asked Kong Jing, Banished King, and others to bring it to the Heavenly Alliance. Presumably, the Heavenly Alliance did the same as the Tao Alliance and distributed these cultivation methods to the various sects so that the members of the Heavenly Alliance could cultivate these cultivation methods. Therefore, I also have the merit of saving the Heavenly Alliance. Now, the Tao Ancestor is here and also bestowed the Tao seed. This means that the Tao Ancestor is the Tao Ancestor who created the cultivation method of the primordial spirit. The Tao Venerable is the Tao Venerable who created the cultivation method of the nascent soul. Of course, I didn't obtain the Tao seed of the Tao Sovereign, so my nascent soul cultivation method wasn't completely modified. After obtaining the Tao seed, I can cultivate with ease. Now, if I obtain the Tao seed of the Tao Ancestor, the last 3 realms of the primordial spirit cultivation method will definitely be completed. It's just, how should this Shao accept this Tao Ancestor's Tao seed? My starry sky scattered nascent soul is a nascent soul. It is naturally unable to accept the Tao seed of a Tao Ancestor. However, apart from the nascent soul, my Tao sect avatar also has a primordial spirit avatar. The Thunderbolt Immortal is a primordial spirit. Although he started cultivating the nascent soul cultivation method, he couldn't condense a nascent soul and had been cultivating according to the scattered soul cultivation method. After he went to the upper world and obtained the primordial spirit cultivation method, he has been cultivating according to the primordial spirit cultivation method. It can be said that he is truly a cultivator who cultivates the primordial spirit. If he can't obtain the Tao seed of the Tao Ancestor, who can? Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly tried to wake the Thunderbolt Immortal up. To his surprise, just as his mind touched the Thunderbolt Immortal, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly swelled up. At the same time, his whole body began to tremble. Something strange happened. The Tao seed that was supposed to fall toward the dispersing nascent soul suddenly shone brightly and began to vibrate. As it buzzed, a strange fragrance seeped out of the Tao seed. The entire Tao seed began to expand as it vibrated. Halos burst out of the Tao seed like they were breaking out of a cocoon. They also seemed to be blooming as they flashed out of the Tao seed. The halos that rushed out of the Tao seed did not dissipate. Instead, they condensed into rings, clouds, and granules that scattered around the Tao seed. Everything was exactly the same as the Tao seed of the previous Tao Sovereign. Seeing this, Xiaohua was relieved and quietly watched with his mind. As the fragrance came out, Xiaohua's scattered soul gradually fell under the Thunderbolt Immortal's body. The Thunderbolt Immortal's body grew bigger and bigger. Strange runes appeared around his body. After each rune appeared, they condensed into a vortex and the fragrance fell into these vortexes. Seeing the Tao seed slowly touching the top of the Thunderbolt Immortal's head, Tao Ancestor finally spat out a word, "Good." His voice was different from before. It was filled with joy and relief. Just like before, Tao Ancestor's body shattered rapidly. In just a flash, it turned into billions of dust and rushed into the Tao seed. At the same time, the Tao seed fell into the top of the Thunderbolt Immortal's head. Boom! The Thunderbolt Immortal's body shattered instantly, turning into billions of fragments of principles. The Tao seed slowly fell among these fragments. When the Tao seed stopped, the splendor flickered, and all the fragments began to recombine and condense again. In just a moment, the Thunderbolt Immortal's perfect body was revealed. Boom! A heavy pressure that was both familiar and strange rushed into Xiaohua's mind from the Thunderbolt Immortal's perception. Thousands of complicated understandings also savagely trampled on Xiao Hua's Tao heart like a tsunami. At the same time, whether it was Taoist Wu, Reverend Yun, Celestial, Feng Wu, Huang Tong, or all the other clones, they had all woken up. They each displayed their bodies of the principles of power and congratulated Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was about to speak when he saw that the thunderbolts did not disappear from the spot where Tao Ancestor had disappeared. Instead, layers of tribulation clouds and waves of heaven and earth majesty were rapidly condensing. Xiao Hua was shocked and cried out, "Fellow Taoists, quickly use the immortal talismans." Fortunately, Tao Ancestor had disappeared, and the confinement of heaven and earth was gradually disappearing. Xiao Hua was in the center of the confinement, and with his strength of 10th tier Yuan Qi, he was able to resist the confinement. When his clones forcefully stuck the immortal talismans given by Su Ji, the tribulation clouds in the sky stopped expanding. However, the tribulation clouds did not dissipate immediately. Instead, they disappeared very slowly. Obviously, the immortal talismans could no longer completely conceal Xiao Hua's strength. Xiao Hua did not have the time to think about the heaven tribulation. He hastily sat down cross-legged and focused his mind on Lightning Reverend, trying his best to help him absorb the enlightenment of the Tao seed and maintain the expansion of his Tao heart. Similarly, an unknown amount of time passed. It seemed to be 1,000 years, but it also seemed to be 10,000 years. When Xiao Hua still hadn't opened his eyes, Bai Juanfeng's voice rang in his ears again. "Many thanks for Senior's understanding. Senior, please wait for half a day. Gao Zhuang will drive the flying shuttle to Worry-Free Manor." Xiao Hua opened his eyes and looked at the flying shuttle, then at the sky and the snow-covered mountain peak below him. In front of him, Bai Fei's face was filled with disdain, and he was looking at Bai Junfeng with interest. Gao Zhuang was standing behind the shuttle, urging his magic power to drive the shuttle. Everything was the same as before. No one knew that in the blink of an eye, something had happened to Xiao Hua in this time and space, something that they had never dreamed of and would never happen in their lifetime. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed and lamented in his heart. "However," he said, "I have been tired for the past few months. If I can find a quiet room to rest when I reach Worry-Free Manor, that would be the best." That's right, that's right. I have the same intention." Bai Fei agreed. When Bai Junfeng heard this, he was even more delighted. He nodded and said, "Seniors, your request is too simple. There's no need to ask Lord Alliance Master for an alliance token. This junior can agree to your request right now. Hee, don't be in such a hurry to say it's so early." Bai Fei said meaningfully, "Lord Alliance Master is anxious for us to go to the Lost Lands, right? This old man has been cultivating in seclusion for several years. Lord Alliance Master, can you wait that long?" Bai Junfeng was a little embarrassed, but he still forced a smile and said, "Lord Alliance Master, even if you're in a hurry, you should wait until Senior is ready, right? It's too early to talk about this now. Let's talk about it when we reach Worry-Free Manor." Bai Fei stood up from the flying shuttle with his hands behind his back. He looked at the mountain peak in the distance, and an aura of disdain for the world was born. Yi Yun, who was cultivating in seclusion, opened her eyes and looked at Bai Fei with tenderness in her eyes. It was as if she was infatuated. Half a day later, the flying shuttle flew to the mountain peak as scheduled. However, not only was the mountain peak fiery red, but it was also covered with strange red plants that were as red as flames. These strange plants had a faint fragrance. In the wind, not only did the fragrance spread in all directions, but the strange plants also swayed with the wind. The entire mountain peak looked as if it was on fire. In the light of the fire, a manor with green bricks, green tiles, and white walls covered the mountain peak. From afar, it looked like a paradise. Wonderful. Bai Fei stood on the flying shuttle and looked at the picturesque scenery. The faint fragrance entered his nose and he couldn't help but clap his hands and say, "Worry-Free Manor, it lives up to its name. Even if you're full of worries, when you see this beautiful scenery, I'm afraid you'll have to throw away your worries." Yes, if there's a beauty by your side, then it'll be even more perfect. Xiaohua nodded and said. However, what he got was by Huan rolling her eyes and Yi Yun's shyness. Since Worry-Free Manor was the territory of the Defeat Valley Immortal Alliance, there were naturally guards of the manor on patrol. Before the flying shuttle could get close, there were already more than 10 Golden Core disciples wearing battle armor and standing on pythons covered in huge scales surrounding the flying shuttle. After seeing Bai Juanfeng's token and the Alliance order, he ordered a few disciples to escort them into the Worry-Free Mountain Villa. The manor had already received a message, and a disciple in charge came out to welcome them. This disciple was at the mid-stage, nascent soul stage. Although they didn't know what his status was in the manor, Bai Fei and Xiaohua definitely couldn't find any fault with his etiquette. After entering the manor, the disciple in charge politely invited Bai Fei and Xiaohua to the reception table and set up a banquet. Bai Junfeng, Yu Biqiong, Yi Yun, and Gao Zhuang naturally accompanied them. During the banquet, they didn't talk about the Lost Land, nor did they talk about the teleportation tunnel. The banquet was a happy one, but when the banquet was about to end, the disciple in charge stood up and raised his wine cup. He said with a smile, "Come, I would like to propose a toast to fellow Daoist Bai and Daoist Xiao. After chatting with the two of you, I have gained some confidence in this trip. I believe that with the two of you'll definitely be able to reach the Lost Land through the teleportation tunnel. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 4954. Steward Su, you think too highly of me. Bai Fei also stood up and raised his cup with a smile. If I had such means, how could I be forced to go to the Lost Land? I just want to go there and have a look because I have some life-saving means. Xiaohua was different from what everyone thought. He also stood up and raised his cup, asking, "Steward Su, I want to ask again, when will we leave? When will the other friends come?" Ha! The steward disciple with the surname Su still had a smile on his face and replied, "You're quite anxious. However, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Looking at the weather now, I'm afraid you won't be able to go there in a short time." "Oh? Why?" Xiaohua frowned and asked in confusion, "Didn't Bai Junfeng get the Alliance Master's order? Isn't our Alliance Master anxious to go there?" The steward disciple looked at Bai Junfeng and replied, "Junfeng is right. Our Alliance Master was very anxious that day because there was a reason." Speaking up to hear, the managing disciple stopped and looked around. In the end, his gaze landed on Xiaohua and said, "Daoist Xiao, why don't we drink this cup first? Let's sit down and I'll explain it to everyone in detail." Xiaohua smiled and said, I was anxious. Come, I toast to Steward Su. Please." The steward disciple raised his cup and looked at Xiaohua. Finally, his eyes fell on Bai Fei, nodded slightly and raised his cup. "Please." Bai Fei was very satisfied with the steward disciple's respect for him. After a gesture, he also drank his cup. After the spiritual wine was finished, the steward disciple asked the servant disciple to take away the spiritual wine and change it for some spiritual fruits. Then, he said, "The climate of the Wuming Mountain is different from that of the Heavenly Alliance. It's hot and there's not much rain all year round. However, it's a little different this year. According to the disciple who stayed near the Wuming Mountain, the mountain is covered in dark clouds and the weather is strange. It may be related to the change of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. According to what the Alliance Master knows, the teleportation tunnel is not a complete teleportation tunnel. Instead, it is made up of several or even dozens of damaged segments. Therefore, the teleportation tunnel is greatly affected by the weather. Under the continuous rain, the danger of teleportation is even greater. What was special was that when everyone looked out of the window, when they arrived, there was still some cold wind, and the weather was still good. But now, in less than an hour, the wind was already blowing, and snow was falling quietly. If nothing unexpected happened, when night fell, the snow would definitely seal the mountain. The snow this winter came too early. Wumeng mountain range might not have 4 seasons, but the mutation has already happened. I'm afraid that it's going to be winter soon. Under such circumstances, I can't recklessly teleport. At this point, the disciple in charge paused again. He picked up a spiritual fruit and put it into his mouth. After a while, he continued, therefore, for the sake of everyone's safety, the alliance leader temporarily decided to suspend the plan before the new year. When spring comes next year, the disciples stationed in the Wumeng Mountains will observe the weather first. When the weather is suitable and the space of the transmission tunnel is stable, we will be allowed to depart. Damn it, is this true or not? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at the serious look of the disciple in charge, he thought to himself, for a lie, you actually made up so many lies. Do you want us to go to the Lost Land? Is there a need to do this? However, on second thought, Xiaohua laughed secretly and said, although I'm anxious to return to the Dawn Rain continent through the Wumeng Mountains, I don't know much about the transmission tunnel. Since you've made so many preparations, I just need to follow. It's only a few months. Although many cultivators will die in the 3 continents in a few months, I have the inside of the space to collect these souls. When I return, I will give them some opportunities as compensation. So, I'm not in a hurry. Thinking about it, Xiaohua nodded and said, if it's for our safety, I can understand. Thank you, Alliance Leader, for your consideration. What about the other cultivators? Bai Fei asked again. The disciple in charge smiled and nodded at Xiaohua, then looked at Bai Fei and answered, actually, as soon as I received Alliance Leader's order, I've already passed this matter to the disciples everywhere. However, Bai Junfeng and the others are more active and are already on the way back, so I didn't have any special instructions. When the other disciples get the news, they may slow down the speed of their return. However, they don't have much time. Fellow Taoists will be tested on the day of the beginning of winter. Alliance Leader hopes to select suitable fellow Taoists before spring so that they can safely pass through the transmission tunnel. What about the cultivators who don't pass the test? Bai Fei asked. Hee, fellow Taoist Bai, please don't worry about this. The disciple in charge smiled and said, fellow Taoists, you've traveled tens of millions of miles. How can we let you return empty-handed? No matter the result of the selection, every fellow Taoist will get the medicinal pills and magic weapons personally refined by Alliance Leader. Moreover, the cultivation methods and secret techniques of my Defeat You Immortal Alliance will be taken out for fellow Taoists to choose. That's great. Bai Fei clapped his hands and said, this way, I'm relieved. Do the 2 of you have any other questions? The disciple in charge looked at Xiaohua and asked. Xiaohua shook his head and looked at Bai Fei. Bai Fei smiled and said, we don't have any more questions. That's good. I have already prepared 2 quiet rooms for the disciples. If the 2 of you don't have any other matters, please go back and rest first. The disciple in charge smiled and said, of course, if the 2 of you have any requests, or if there are any more questions, you can find the disciple on duty nearby and let them send a message to I will come over immediately. In addition, the 2 of you can walk around freely in the worry-free manner. However, if you want to leave the worry-free manor, please tell me otherwise, there are some forbidden spells outside the manor. Although they aren't powerful, if you touch them, it's more troublesome. Hearing this, Bai Fei stood up and said, Manager Su, please don't worry. We are cultivators and will not cause trouble. When we reach the quiet room, we will only cultivate and will not cause any trouble for the manor. Don't you think so, Taoist Master Xiao? Xiaohua stood up and said, what Taoist Bai said is also I think. Manager Su, please don't worry. Thank you so much. If the 2 of you have any daily requests, feel free to mention it to the disciple on duty. I can't accompany you all the time. The disciple in charge stood up and laughed as he sent the guests off. Under the guidance of the disciple of the worry-free manor, Xiaohua and the others arrived in front of a few pavilions. Yi Yin, naturally sent by Fei, off and stopped at the side of one of the pavilions. Under the guidance of Bai Junfeng and the other two disciples of the worry-free manner, Xiaohua stopped in front of another pavilion not far from Bai Fei. Bai Junfeng took out a token and respectfully handed it to Xiaohua and said, "Senior, this is the quiet room that the worry-free manor specially prepared for you. As long as you activate the restriction, without your permission, no one can enter." "Okay." Xiaohua took the token and nodded, "Thank you for your trouble. You all should rest early. You have worked harder than us all along the way." "It's not hard at all." Bai Junfeng's face was a little red, as if he had drunk too much spiritual wine. He smiled and said, "It's my honor to be able to invite Senior and Senior Bai to the worry-free manor." After a few polite words, Xiaohua entered the pavilion. After activating the restriction, he looked at it for a moment and said coldly, "I'm afraid this restriction can't even stop the prying of a unity stage cultivator, right?" "Huh, fellow Daoist, you're thinking too much." Daoist Master Thunderbolt said with a smile in his lower dantian. He said it well, "Without your permission, no one can enter," but he didn't say, "Without your permission, no one can pry," right? He doesn't care if he pries or not. Xiaohua casually threw the token on the jade table and sat down cross-legged. He said in his heart, "Daoist Thunderbolt, the cultivation technique of the primordial spirit is still incomplete in the void stage, void refinement stage, and Dao integration stage. Now that we have received benefits from the Dao ancestor, it's best to modify and perfect the cultivation technique of these three stages." When he heard Xiaohua talking about modifying the cultivation technique, Daoist Master Thunderbolt didn't dare to be negligent and replied, "That's right, Daoist Master Thunderbolt is right. The Dao ancestor has great expectations for us. We can't let him down. I will pack up and go to the space to discuss the cultivation technique with Daoist Master Thunderbolt." Just as Xiaohua's mind was about to enter the space, his heart suddenly moved and he asked, "Daoist Thunderbolt, after obtaining this Dao seed, do you feel anything?" "Of course." Daoist Master Thunderbolt was slightly excited and shouted in a low voice, "When we cultivated previously, it seemed that we only saw the cultivation technique and didn't know the origin of the cultivation technique, let alone the origin of the technique. Especially when I entrusted my primordial spirit to the laws of heaven and earth like Daoist Master Thunderbolt, I felt that I had become one with the laws of heaven and earth. However, this one was extremely vague. It was like the heavens were one, the earth was one, you were one, and I was also one. I couldn't see through the essence of this one. When this Dao seed entered my body, I suddenly seemed to grow taller and could see more things. I felt that your one was similar to my one, but also different. Perhaps, I could know the origin of the cultivation method and the origin of the spell if I could differentiate my one from yours." "That's right. That way, I could know the origin of the cultivation method and the origin of the spell." When Xiaohua heard this, apart from being happy, there was also a trace of regret. He asked tentatively, "Is it possible that there's nothing else?" "What else?" Daoist Master Thunderbolt scratched his head and said, "Daoist Master Thunderbolt, can you explain it clearly?" Xiaohua was naturally talking about human nature, but since Daoist Master Thunderbolt didn't understand, presumably this Dao seed was only a Dao seed and not the seed of human nature. Xiaohua could only smile and say, "When it's time to know, Daoist Master Thunderbolt will naturally know." After saying this, Xiaohua opened his mouth again and said, "Daoist Master Wu, where is Daoist Huang Tong?" "We're here. Do you have any orders?" Following Xiaohua's voice, Daoist Master Wu and Huang Tong flew out of Xiaohua's body and stood in the quiet room with a smile. P.S. Fellow Daoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support. Congratulations to the leader of Flying Clouds and Sunsets, and I wish Standing Still Flag a happy birthday. Chapter 4955. Xiaohua raised his eyes to look at the two doppelgangers. Their auras were similar to before they were formed by the laws, but their auras were different. Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the two doppelgangers. He felt that whether it was their physical bodies, laws, witchcraft, or demons, there was an indescribable feeling. Congratulations, fellow Taoists. Xiao Hua could not help but sigh as he cupped his hands. Congratulations, congratulations. How could Taoist Witch and Huang Tong not know what Xiao Hua was thinking? The two doppelgangers also returned the greeting. This is fellow Taoists' opportunity, and also our opportunity. The Tao Ancestor and Tao Master have planted the Tao seeds. Although fellow Taoist and Thunderbolt Immortal benefited, we also benefited. Good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands. Since the heavenly Tao favors us, we must also contribute to the heavens and earth. Today, I'll have to trouble you two to go to the Wuming Mountain Range. Huh, no problem, no problem. Huang Tong was the most straightforward. Without needing Xiao Hua to say more, she immediately spread her wings, tore the void apart, and flew in. Taoist Witch did not say much. Seeing Huang Tong leave, he nodded at Xiao Hua and followed her into the space. Alright, since you two have left, let's quickly deduce the cultivation method. Seeing the ripples in the space, Xiao Hua said lightly and brought Thunderbolt Immortal into the space. In just a few days, black and white markings suddenly appeared at the spot where Huang Tong had torn apart space. Immediately, a powerful spatial force tore apart the nearby space like a giant hand. An incomparably brazen yuan will stretched out from the space. What is this? Before the primordial thought could be retracted, Huang Tong's voice came from the void. Could it be that someone is spying on us? Huang Tong's return had already attracted Xiao Hua's attention. He opened his eyes and looked at a certain spot in the space. He smiled faintly. If I'm not wrong, it should be by Fei testing and suspecting I. But don't worry about him, he's just a child. Hee, this Bai Fei has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Taoist Witch's figure came out of the space crack. He also looked at the same spot and smiled. He actually dared to use this in front of me. Fellow Taoist, why don't you give Bai Fei an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Xiao Hua stood up and watched Huang Tong and Taoist priest Wu return. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We are great sages of the human race. Why are we arguing with a nascent soul kid? Quickly tell me about the situation in the Wuming Mountain Range. Huang Tong glanced at Taoist Witch and said, I'll tell you about the Khanate restriction first. Taoist Witch, tell me about the situation of the soul beasts. All right. Taoist Witch nodded in agreement. Fellow Taoist. Huang Tong looked at Xiao Hua with a serious face and said, this matter is beyond our expectations, but also within our expectations. Fellow Taoist, don't keep me in suspense. Xiao Hua's heart was somewhat anxious, but he still restrained his temper and scolded, quickly say it. The reason why I said it was beyond our expectations is because the power of the innate restriction is far beyond our imagination. Huang Tong didn't dare to be negligent and explained, before my spatial escape technique reached the Wuming Mountain Range, I already felt as if the laws of heaven and earth had been cut off. The spatial tunnel had also been blocked, and I couldn't take half a step forward. Furthermore, I also tried in other directions, but all the spatial laws that were heading towards the Dawn Rain continent were forcefully imprisoned in the Wuming Mountain Range. In other words, the Wuming Mountain Range is a checkpoint from the Yi-Lin continent to the Dawn Rain continent. A bottleneck. A path that must be passed through. We can't go around it. And now, this bottleneck has been blocked. My spatial techniques can't detect the spatial laws of the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua's expression didn't change. He nodded and said, fellow Taoist spatial techniques are unparalleled in the world. If even you can't use your spatial escape technique to pass through, then the cultivators of the Yi-Lin continent most likely can't pass through. That should be the case. Huang Tong replied, of course, this situation isn't out of my expectations. If it wasn't for the fact that the Wuming Mountain Range is so difficult to pass through, the Devil Clan would have invaded the Dawn Rain continent on a large scale, and the cultivators of the Yi-Lin continent would have been able to freely travel between the two continents. Oh, also, this Wuming mountain range doesn't have any traces of the boundary laws. It's different from the natural restrictions between the three continents and the Dawn Rain continent. This is also within my expectations. The natural restrictions of the Wuming mountain range are probably natural restrictions, different from the Buddhist, Taoist, and demon immortal arrays. Xiaohua replied, because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth between the three continents and the Dawn Rain continent doesn't circulate, while the spiritual energy of heaven and earth between the Yi-Lin continent and the Dawn Rain continent is the same. As for how the spatial laws of the Wuming mountain range were imprisoned, I didn't look too much. Huang Tong said again, after all, fellow Taoist was preparing to pass through some teleportation tunnel, so I didn't take off my pants to fart. It was unnecessary. Oh right, fellow Taoist didn't see any teleportation tunnel? Xiaohua asked. Huang Tong shook his head and said, I came and went in a hurry, so I didn't look too carefully. It seems like this teleportation tunnel is quite hidden. Fellow Taoist, what's the situation of the soul cultivators in the Wuming mountain range? Xiaohua looked at Taoist Witch again. Taoist Witch seemed to be in a good mood, probably because he had just returned from the soul cultivator's land. He smiled and said, if the Dawn Rain continent is the abandoned land of Taoism, then the Wuming mountain range is the abandoned land of millions of soul cultivators in the Meng mountain range. What do you mean? Xiaohua raised his eyebrows, as if he had understood something, and asked in return. There are soul cultivators in the Wuming mountain range, but they have lost the original intention of soul cultivators. Taoist Witch answered, not only have they lost the cultivation method of the 9 heavens of spirit origin, but they have also thrown the green seal script into the dust of time. They have many great gods, more than 13 of them. Also, they call these great gods great shamans. I took a look, and there are about 20 to 30 of them. Other than great shamans, there are also middle shamans and junior shamans. I have never heard of many middle shamans and little shamans, and those who have become great shamans are only the famous shamans in the Wuming mountain range. Apart from great shamans, they also worship soul beasts and call them shaman gods. Their status is even higher than that of the 13 great gods. Xiaohua nodded thoughtfully. That's not strange. The original intention of soul cultivators has been lost, and they have lost the source of living water. They will believe in anything that can be used as a religion. That's not all. Taoist Witch continued, fellow Taoist, do you still remember what Xiao Jian did when you first arrived at the hidden immortal continent from the West Ocean? Performing rituals? Selling divination? Xiaohua smiled. How could he not remember? Yes. Taoist Witch nodded. The current Wuming mountain range is a mess. They don't cultivate the 9 heavens of spirit origin and the pure soul spells, but they practice some inexplicable witchcraft, pretending to be mysterious. Oh, by the way, demons, ghost cultivators, and Taoism spells are also entangled with witchcraft. It's a hodgepodge. It's declining. Taoist Witch was shaking his head as he spoke, but when he reached this point, he was stunned again. He looked up at Xiaohua in disbelief, and then at Xiaohua. Xiaohua was also stunned like a statue, and he also looked at Taoist Witch. Could it be, Xiaohua and Taoist Witch spoke almost at the same time. Both of them said 2 words and didn't dare to say more. The situation of soul cultivators in the Wuming mountain range was very similar to the situation of the Taoism in the hidden immortal continent. However, the Taoism was suppressed by the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect, and in the Wuming mountain range, neither the Heaven Alliance nor the Tao Alliance forcibly suppressed it. Instead, they used time and spells to destroy the soul cultivators' inheritance bit by bit. How could Wang Tong not know what Xiaohua and Taoist Witch were thinking? The cunning phoenix Dharma body smirked and said faintly, damn it, the Xiaoyu continent's waters are too deep. We haven't even dealt with the 3 continents, and now the Wuming mountain range pops up. If we want to save the world, we must destroy the immortal formation. According to Fairy Xingyue's metaphor, we should have offended the immortals in the immortal realm. That's someone who even she doesn't dare to say. Now, we have to face the person who divided the Wuming Mountain range into two and wants to wipe out the soul cultivators from the world. Are we tired of living? Daoist Witch was in a good mood, but now he felt like he had fallen into an ice cave. He was born to be a witch, so he naturally cared about the fate of the soul cultivators, just like Xiaohua. How could he not be nervous when he suddenly realized that the soul cultivators might be annihilated? Daoist Witch. Xiaohua understood Daoist Witch's heart and Huang Tong's warning. He sighed and said, "We have a lot of things to do, but our strength is limited and we don't have much time. We can only pick the most important things to do." The soul cultivators in the Wuming Mountain range have been lost, but the millions of soul cultivators in the Meng Mountain range are still there, aren't they? Any inheritance in this world exists to the heavens and will never be annihilated by humans. You have to have faith in the will of heaven. I have faith in the will of heaven, but I have no faith in people's hearts. Daoist Witch shook his head slightly and looked at Xiaohua and Huang Tong. He said bitterly, "You two can discuss it first. Daoist Huang Tong knows what I saw. I will take my leave first." After that, Daoist Witch's figure flashed and he disappeared into space. Xiaohua and Huang Tong looked at each other. After a while, Huang Tong said, "This guess is a bit presumptuous and too sudden. I'm afraid Daoist Witch can't accept it for a while. Let him think about it calmly first." Then, Huang Tong briefly explained the situation in the depths of the Wuming Mountain range and disappeared into space. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a reward, and congratulations to the leader of Flying Clouds and Sunsets, and happy birthday to Standing Still Flag. Chapter 4956. Sigh, it's really one trouble after another. Xiaohua pinched his chin, and a worried expression appeared on his face. He sighed and said, "Just now, we managed to suppress the Tao Sect's immortal formation, and now, the soul cultivator, this ladle, has appeared. And the Taoist immortal array is still unsolved. I have 10 doppelgangers, but this seems to be related to ancient secrets. I'm afraid I can't do anything about it. I'll do what I can do first." After that, Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and continued to deduce the last 3 realms of primordial spirit cultivation with the Thunderbolt Immortal. Bai Fei entered the pavilion accompanied by Yi Yun. After chatting for a while, Yi Yun got up and said goodbye. Before she walked to the door, Yi Yun suddenly turned around and asked, "Senior Bai, the teleportation tunnel to the Lost Land is actually very dangerous. The cultivation environment of the Heavenly Alliance is so good, you don't have to go to the Lost Land." Bai Fei looked at Yi Yun's beautiful face and said in a low voice, "Miss Yi, you must remember the few things you asked me when we met in the Wuming Mountains, right?" Yi Yun nodded slightly and replied, "Of course, if it weren't for those few questions, I wouldn't have said, 'I understand,' when we were in Tong Lake City. You called the Wuming Mountains Million Mountains, and I know, you're not a cultivator of the Heavenly Alliance. You must be from the Lost Land, right?" "Yes, thank you, Miss Yi. I didn't tell you what I meant at that time." Bai Fei smiled and said, "Since Miss Yi knows this Bai's background, I believe you should also know, this Bai must return." "Senior Bai." Yi Yun hesitated for a while and said, "The spiritual qi of heaven and earth has changed. I'm afraid even the Lost Land will be affected. Instead of going back to the Lost Land, why don't you stay in the Heavenly Alliance? It's more convenient for you to get cultivation methods and elixirs than the Lost Land, right? Of course, this is just my opinion. As for where you go, you have to consider it yourself. I'll take my leave now." Yi Yun bowed and took her leave. Bai Fei watched as Yi Yun left. He took out his token and activated the array. He released his divine sense and looked around for a long time before sitting down cross-legged. He rubbed his chin as if he was thinking. At this moment, a very clear voice suddenly sounded, "What's wrong?" Master can't bear to part with this infatuated little girl? No. Bai Fei did not seem to be surprised at all. Instead, he said in a low voice, I keep feeling that there's another meaning behind Yi Yun's words. Oh? What do you mean? The voice said sourly. This concubine only heard concern and did not hear anything else. Furthermore, I feel that Master's methods are even more brilliant. With just a few words, you managed to make a woman with absolute evil profound fall in love with you. Little you, don't you feel that this journey is too strange? Bai Fei ignored him and continued to ask, when Bai Junfeng saw me and that Taoist Master Shao, it was as if he saw fish that had taken the bait. He was afraid that we would go back on our words and escape, so he kept bringing us to teleport. Previously, I was just joking with Taoist Master Shao, but I didn't expect that Bai Junfeng would actually use the Order of the Alliance Master to defeat the Immortal Alliance. His purpose was to not let us stay in Border City for long. This concubine does not know. The voice dragged out the rhythm and said, didn't this concubine say that she wanted to go and take a look that day? Master was not willing to let this concubine take the risk, so this concubine could only not go. By the way, little you. Bai Fei's thoughts jumped and he suddenly asked, is it time to water the spiritual herbs in this world with spiritual liquid? Yes, Master. The voice hurriedly replied, recently, Master has been teleporting and has not given this concubine any spiritual liquid. Many spiritual herbs have begun to wither. However, Master can rest assured that this concubine will help Master look after those spiritual herbs that Master values. There will be no problem. Good. Bai Fei nodded and said. He vigilantly released his divine sense to look around. Only then did he raise his hand and reach into his clothes. He pulled out a small bottle the size of a thumb that was tied together with a colorful string. This small bottle was green and there were some exquisite, dark green leaf-like patterns on the bottle. Wasn't this the strange small bottle that Xiao Hua saw when he participated in the martial arts convention at Luofeng Mountain? At this time, the small bottle was the same as before. There was a cork tightly covering the small bottle. After Bai Fei took out the small bottle, he took out a jade bottle from his storage ring. After opening the cork of the small bottle, he carefully poured the small bottle on top of the jade bottle. Pa. 2 drops of green spiritual liquid dripped from the small bottle. When the spiritual liquid fell into the jade bottle, Bai Fei formed a seal with his hand and waved his left hand. Swish swish. A stream of water appeared in mid-air and trickled into the jade bottle. Then, Bai Fei closed the small bottle and carefully hid the small bottle in front of his chest again. Then, Bai Fei shook the jade bottle in his hand and listened for a moment. A sneer appeared on his face and he secretly said, Hee, what does the change of the spiritual aura of heaven and earth have to do with me? With the spiritual liquid, not to mention returning to Xiaoyu continent, I can still cultivate even if the heaven and earth are turned upside down. Instead of cultivating in fear under the attention of so many capable people in the Heavenly Alliance, it's better to return to the Lost Land. No one can see through my secret. After a while, Bai Fei raised his hand and pointed at a quaint bracelet on his left wrist and said, Okay, you can come out. As Bai Fei's voice fell, a layer of yellow light appeared on the bracelet. A small fox with snow-white fluffy hair flew out from the light. This small fox turned a few times in mid-air and the brilliance bloomed like a kaleidoscope. A charming woman appeared in mid-air. Greetings, Master. The woman landed on the ground and immediately bowed respectfully. Xiao Hua waved his hand and handed the jade bottle to the woman and said, You don't have to be so polite. This is the spiritual liquid. You can water all the spiritual herbs in this world. Yes, Master. Xiaoya answered and took the jade bottle. She shook it with her hand and said happily, Master, I really don't understand. Where did Master get so much spiritual liquid? With this spiritual liquid, the spiritual herbs in this world will grow several times or even dozens of times faster than those outside. With this spiritual liquid, it's really easy for Master to cultivate to the immortal realm. Bai Fei's mood was obviously very good. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Why are you so talkative today?" Hee hee. Xiaoya smiled charmingly and licked the corner of her mouth with her pink tongue. She said, "Do you still need me to say it?" "Master understands." "Huh, okay." Bai Fei smiled and said, "After you water the spiritual herbs, I will give you 3 drops of spiritual liquid." "Thank you, Master." Xiaoya was wild with joy. She winked at Bai Fei and moved her body, falling into the yellow light in Bai Fei's left bracelet again. Bai Fei waited for Xiaoya to fall into the bracelet before he raised his right hand and touched the small bottle hidden in front of his chest. His eyes narrowed slightly. After a while, Xiaoya flew out again and respectfully returned the jade bottle to Bai Fei. Just as she was about to return, Bai Fei suddenly called out, "Xiaoya, don't be anxious. I have something for you to do." Oh. Master, please tell me. What do you need me to do?" Xiaoya was startled and hurriedly asked. "What do you need me to do?" "I will tell you in detail in a while." Bai Fei seemed to have thought of something and said, "I remember when you met Daoist Xiao earlier, you used your Fox clan's secret technique to investigate him. You said this Daoist Xiao had an aura that made you feel very close and very fearful, right?" "Yes." Xiaoya's eyes lit up when she heard Daoist Xiao. She said, "Master, this Daoist Xiao is definitely a little strange. I feel that, if he's not from the demon clan who used a secret technique to hide himself, then he must have cultivated some kind of magical power of my Fox clan or the demon clan. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have such a feeling. However, facing this kind of secret technique, my secret technique isn't effective, so it's hard to make an accurate judgment. If he's from the demon clan, how's his strength?" Bai Fei asked with interest. Xiaoya didn't hesitate and immediately answered, "Of course not as good as Master. He only hid his aura and didn't hide his strength. What he showed was his true strength." "No." Bai Fei shook his head slightly and said, "I don't think so. Although I can't see anything wrong with him, my feeling tells me that he's definitely not that simple." "Of course." Xiaoya said with a smile, "He might not be from the human clan. Of course, he's not that simple. Why would such a demon clan go to the Dawn Rain continent?" Bai Fei asked. Xiaoya pondered for a moment and answered, "I don't know about this. However, the Dawn Rain continent might not be affected by the changes in the Heaven Alliance's heaven and earth spiritual energy. Even Master wants to return to the Dawn Rain continent. It's normal for this demon clan called Daoist Master Xiao to want to take a look, right?" "Actually." Bai Fei hesitated and said, "Xiaoya, do you still remember Xiao Hua who I mentioned to you before?" "Xiao Hua?" Xiaoya hesitated for a moment and said with a bitter smile, "Master, you've mentioned this person's name countless times. If you didn't say that he's a male cultivator, I would really think that he's a woman with absolute evil mysterious een. Do you know why I've often mentioned him all these years?" Bai Fei asked. Xiaoya lowered her head and didn't say anything. After a while, she raised her head and said, "Master, do you need me to tell you the truth?" "Of course it's the truth." Bai Fei nodded. "Xiao Hua is the demon in your heart." Xiaoya hit the nail on the head. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward. Thank you for all forms of support. Tanhua finally resumed updating. From today onwards, I'll update twice a day, 3,000 words per update. Thank you fellow Taoists for your support. Chapter 4957. Bai Fei was expressionless and didn't answer. Xiaoya continued, "You've always regarded Xiao Hua as a goal that you have to surpass in your cultivation, even though you know in your heart that your current cultivation has far surpassed him. But, before you see him, you always feel that he's firmly on top of you. You will never be able to raise your head in front of him. Actually, you did everything possible to return to the Dawn Rain continent. Avoiding the experts of the Heaven Alliance is one thing, avoiding the changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is another, but the real purpose. I'm afraid only you know. You have to use your own strength to prove that you are the master of the Heaven Tao. You have already stepped on Xiao Hua. At this moment, Bai Fei spoke, that's right. On the Yi-Lin continent, I can also avoid the experts of the Heaven Alliance. However, on the Dawn Rain continent, the changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth are still unavoidable. My greatest wish and most important purpose for returning to the Dawn Rain continent is to eradicate this inner demon in my heart. I want to see Xiao Hua's cultivation. I want to see his progress in these hundreds of years. That Xiao Hua who firmly suppressed me back then is no longer an obstacle in my cultivation. Master. Xiaoye advised tactfully, actually, you don't have to care too much about these. How many cultivators in this world have such opportunities like yours? You have this heaven-defying spiritual liquid and also obtained an ancient immortal artifact of heaven and earth. Just based on these, that Xiao Hua is far inferior to you. Moreover, besides these, you have the tenacity, courage that other cultivators don't have. These are more important than elixirs and cultivation techniques. Now that you have already stepped on Xiao Hua, you will step on the entire Heaven Alliance and the entire Tao Alliance in the future. Bai Fei looked at Xiaoye and smiled, Xiaoye, thank you for your encouragement. Even more so, thank you for your company in these hundreds of years. Master, you're too polite. Xiaoye pursed her lips and smiled. Ever since I was saved by Master in Wanxi's Fu Lin mountain range, I knew that I was destined to be with Master in this life. Only when Master goes far can I go far. Ah, that's right. Wanxi's Fu Lin Ridge. Bai Fei sighed, hundreds of years have passed in the blink of an eye. Thinking back to yesterday, Shi Wuming, Mo Shan, Roa Taohong, and I were trapped in the Fu Lin Ridge's ancient prohibition spell. If it weren't for your help, I would have been killed by that soul warrior just like the three of them. Of course not. Xiao Yu hurriedly said. Master, you are truly blessed with great fortune, and clever in your schemes. Not only did you manage to kill that spirit warrior, you even managed to obtain the secret map. That was how you were able to use the ancient teleportation portal to reach the Yi-Lin continent. Otherwise, how could Master cultivate to the nascent soul realm in Dawn Rain continent alone? Hearing this, Bai Fei's expression tensed up, and he asked, but, do you know? That day, other than the four of us, Xiao Hua also went to Fu Lin mountain range. But I don't know why, but when he heard the words Fu Lin mountain range, he immediately refused and left. He didn't even give a reason. Also, I want to tell you that although Xiao Hua was only a foundation establishment cultivator at that time, his strength had already reached the gold core realm. He even had a dharma name that only nascent soul cultivators had, that was Immortal Xiao. Ah! Xiao Yu's body shook, and she exclaimed, Master, you mean this Immortal Xiao is the Xiao Hua you mentioned? No. Bai Fei shook his head and said, I'm just suspecting. And the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's impossible. Of course. Xiao Yu smiled and said, that's absolutely impossible. It's just your inner demon causing trouble. Yes. Bai Fei sighed and said, when we left Dawn Rain continent, Xiao Hua had just been expelled by the Imperial Thunder sect. It seemed that he wanted to be a rogue cultivator in Meng Kingdom. It's impossible for him to obtain the secret map of the millions of Meng mountains like us. And the most impossible thing is that the teleportation tunnel had already collapsed because of the mutation. It's impossible for it to be used again. It's also impossible for cultivators to go from Dawn Rain continent to Heaven Alliance. Of course, we can't rule out other secret passages. Xiao Yu smiled and said, but, Master, to be able to own a piece of heaven and earth, to be able to possess spirit liquid, in this world, only Master alone. Even if Xiao Hua is called Immortal Xiao, he's definitely not this Immortal Xiao in front of us. It's also impossible for him to cultivate to the middle stage of nascent soul realm. Actually. Bai Fei smiled bitterly and said, when I met Immortal Xiao, I already told him my name. If he's Xiao Hua, he wouldn't tell me that he's called Immortal Xiao. Of course, I've already changed my appearance when I was pregnant. Even if he's Xiao Hua, he still wouldn't be able to recognize me. Master can change his appearance when he's pregnant, then Xiao Hua can naturally change his appearance when he's pregnant. Xiao Yu asked. It's said that Xiao Hua has taken the rejuvenation pill. His appearance hasn't changed for 1,000 years. He's also not ugly, so he shouldn't change much when he's pregnant. Bai Fei seemed to know a lot about Xiao Hua and replied. Who knows? Xiao Yu pursed her lips and said with a smile, you humans value appearances the most. After a layer of grayish-black light distorted, a ghost head flew out from the fog. The moment the ghost head appeared, it immediately shouted, Master, why did you summon the ghost servant? Bai Fei raised his hand and flicked it. A ray of light appeared and Xiao Hua's appearance appeared. Bai Fei pointed at Xiao Hua's appearance and said, this cultivator is meditating in a pavilion not far from this old man. You don't have to disturb him. Just watch from the side. If there are any strange movements, immediately report to this old man. Yes, Master. The ghost servant replied and turned into a black gas and disappeared into the void. After the ghost servant left, Bai Fei shook his head in boredom and said with a bitter smile, damn it, am I too nervous? It's just a cultivator with the same Dharma name. Even if the two of them are the same person, so what? Xiao Hua is just a clown. In this era of change, I'm the real ruler. After he finished speaking, Bai Fei sat down cross-legged again. He took out a scarlet pill from the heaven and earth bracelet and placed it in the air. Then, Bai Fei activated his true essence. Roar. A rumbling sound came from Bai Fei's mouth. Layers of golden scales appeared on Bai Fei's arms and back. The surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi turned into a hurricane and rushed into the gaps between the scales. Bai Fei's eyes also shone with a golden light. Seeing the golden light and golden fog rush out of Bai Fei's mouth and nose like a dragon and quickly circle around his strange body, Bai Fei slapped his head again. Boom! A 10-foot-tall nascent soul wearing spirit armor flew out. This nascent soul opened its mouth and a bamboo-colored flying sword flew out. It rushed into the sky and turned into a sword net. The nascent soul formed a sword seal and controlled the flying sword to shuttle through the sword net. Bai Fei was actually doing two things at once. He was refining his body and refining his flying sword at the same time. It was no wonder that he had the arrogance of stepping on Xiao Hua. This kind of talent, this kind of hardship, it was just as Xiaoya said. It was not something an ordinary cultivator could have. Unfortunately, even if Bai Fei's imagination were to grow 9 layers of wings, it would still be impossible for his imagination to catch up to Xiao Hua's cultivation, let alone his true strength. Never in his wildest dreams could he have imagined that more than a month later, the 3 jade slips that Xiaoya brought back from the auction house, the nascent soul cultivation method, and the spiritual root selection method that made him go wild with joy, were all modified by Xiao Hua. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 4958. Bai Fei held the 3 jade slips and read them while suppressing the ecstasy in his heart. Before he could withdraw his divine thought, he could not help but ask, Xiao Yu, you said that these extremely precious cultivation methods are only sold for 10 top-grade crystals. They are sold in the auction house of Cloud City. Yes, Master. Xiao Yu's eyes were also filled with a strange light as she replied, I didn't dare to believe it before. I waited in the auction house for a few days, but when I saw spirit severing stage cultivators, combination stage cultivators, and even chi refining stage cultivators buying them, I knew it was true. However, I didn't have any crystals on me, and Master specially warned me not to harm any human, so I spent so much time to get these 3 jade slips. have you seen this cultivation method before? Bai Fei asked while waving the jade slips in his hand. Xiao Yu smiled and said, how can I not take a look at the cultivation method I brought for Master? What do you think? Bai Fei asked with interest. Master, I don't know the cultivation method of the human race. Xiao Yu listened and replied seriously, however, I saw the qi refining and essence refining cultivation methods inside. It seems that some of them are enlightened, and I feel that if I cultivate them, I may succeed. So I think, this cultivation method must be real. Yes, the person who created this cultivation method must be the most powerful person in the world. Bai Fei sighed and said, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth has changed, and the human race with the true spirit bloodline has a much faster cultivation speed than ordinary cultivators. This means that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth is related to the spirit beasts. Since you think this cultivation method is useful, it must be real. Xiao Yu, did you find out which senior of the Heaven Alliance created this cultivation method? This. Xiao Yu smiled bitterly and said, now we only know that it was created by a senior named Zhang Xiaohua. As for whether he was an expert of the Heaven Alliance or the Tao Alliance, no one knows. The Heaven Alliance said he was from the Heaven Alliance, and the Tao Alliance said he was from the Tao Alliance. However, the problem is that this senior Zhang Xiaohua is elusive, and no one knows where he is. No one knew where he came from. There are even some people who say that Zhang Xiaohua is not creating a cultivation method by herself, but a group of people, a group of peerless experts, creating a cultivation method together. It's just that they want Zhang Xiaohua to come out alone. When she spoke up to hear, Xiaoya suddenly recalled something and reported. Right, Master, Senior Zhang Xiaohua made an appearance recently in Tong Lake City. What? Tong Lake City? Bai Fei was shocked and almost jumped up. When? I've calculated. It should be the few days when Master arrived at Tong Lake City. Xia Yu replied. Impossible. Bai Fei waved his hand and said, if that's the case, why didn't I know about it? However, just as Bai Fei spoke up to this point, his expression suddenly changed greatly, as if he had thought of something. Xiaoya did not seem to notice Bai Fei's expression as she continued. It said that Senior Zhang Xiaohua suddenly appeared in the Heaven Alliance's Tong Lake City and ordered the city lord of Tong Lake City, the Reverend Jade Lake, to hold an auction. Apart from the cultivators who participated in the auction that day, Senior Zhang also asked Master Bihu to use the teleportation array to teleport the owners of the shops on the 7th, 8th, and 9th levels of Tong Lake City to the auction. He sold all the jade slips at the price of 10 supreme-grade crystals for each jade slip. After the auction, not only did the number of cultivators in Tong Lake City decrease by 40%, but the shops on the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors were also emptied by 30%. Many people said that the emptied shops should be the spies of the Tao Alliance in Tong Lake City. They immediately left the Heaven Alliance and returned to the Tao Alliance after taking the cultivation method. D**mnet, D**mnet, D**mnet. Bai Fei cursed angrily and shouted, I understand now. Why didn't Bai Junfeng let Daoist Xiao and I stay in Tong Lake City for long? He didn't dare to let us stay in Border City for long. He was afraid that if we saw the cultivation method, we wouldn't go to the Lost Land. That's right. Xiaoya added fuel to the fire. Ordinary cultivators go to the Lost Land because they want to find a way to cultivate, right? Now that there's a spiritual root selection method and a modified cultivation method, who would still take the risk to go to the Lost Land? That little girl with the evil spirit Profound Een doesn't seem to be dead set on Master. Master, you have to think of a way. Oh, it seems that the Void Cloud pill is useful. Humph. Bai Fei snorted coldly, scaring Xiaoya into shutting her mouth. The entire pavilion immediately fell silent. Do you have a portrait of Senior Zhang? Bai Fei suddenly asked. Master. Xiaoya replied. Senior Zhang is now the most powerful person in the Yilin continent. Even Long Shenxi of the Heaven Alliance can't compare to him. Which cultivator would dare to keep a portrait of Senior Zhang? However, it said that because of Senior Zhang's appearance in Tong Lake City is now filled with Heaven Alliance experts. Even, at the border between the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance, there's an abyss called the Heaven Sacrifice Abyss. The Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance have already sent many experts to set up a blockade. The Heaven Alliance wants to prevent Senior Zhang's cultivation method from falling into the hands of the Tao Alliance. The Tao Alliance wants to get the cultivation method from the Heaven Alliance. Bai Fei rubbed his chin and muttered to himself in confusion. However, I don't understand why Senior Zhang Xiaohua would create a spiritual root selection method for no reason. Why would he modify the nascent soul and primordial spirit cultivation methods? What good would it do him? A cultivation method costs 10 top-grade crystals. 10 top-grade crystals can't even buy a magic treasure. It's a cheap price. Could it be that Senior Zhang? At this point, Bai Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. As if he had a card up his sleeve, he said, I understand now. Senior Zhang must be from another hidden immortal alliance that's similar in strength to the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance. They want to use this cultivation method to cause a war between the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance. Only then can they benefit from it. Xiaoya thought for a while and nodded hesitantly. Master, you're right. I think that Zhang Xiaohua might have been possessed by the devil race. Now that the Yilan continent is in turmoil, the devil race has always wanted to show themselves. If they use this cultivation method, the human race will definitely be in chaos. Wouldn't the devil race benefit from it? It could also be the sole cultivators of the Million Meng Mountains. Bai Fei guessed even more boldly. They're not willing to stay in the Million Meng Mountains. They want to covet the entire Yilan continent. At the very least, they want to form a tripartite balance with the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance. Master. Hearing this, Xiaoya couldn't help but sigh. I can't help but admire Master's choice. This is not only Master's shrewdness, but also the favor of the heavens. The Yilan continent is about to fall into chaos, and Master has returned to the Xiaoyu continent. When Master's cultivation reaches the highest level, he will return to the Yilan continent to fight with them. Hee. Bai Fei smiled and said, Xiaoya, you're thinking too much. I'm not the kind of person who commands the winds and clouds. I only want to cultivate quietly and embark on the path of immortality. Master, you're thinking too little. Xiaoya pursed her lips and smiled. How can a person with such good fortune like Master only cultivate quietly? Let's not talk about other things. Master's world is an ancient immortal item. It's 365 mu. Although there's no spiritual energy of heaven and earth, no matter if it's humans, demons, or spiritual herbs, everything can survive in it. This is the method of an immortal. Damn it. Hearing Xiaoya's words, Bai Fei's expression changed greatly. He cursed under his breath. Have you forgotten what I warned you about? This concubine deserves to die, this concubine deserves to die. When Xiaoya heard this, her entire graceful body trembled. She hurriedly prostrated herself on the ground and said, this concubine won't dare to do it again. Bai Fei watched Xiaoya's body fall to the ground. He raised his hands slightly and a fist-sized gold-devouring bug engraved with countless golden threads appeared between his fingers. Bai Fei's expression was uncertain. He was extremely regretful that he had revealed the secret of the world to Xiaoya. However, he had no choice. He couldn't farm in the world. His puppet was also clumsy, so he could only rely on Xiaoya to take care of those spiritual herbs. After a full 5 minutes, Bai Fei waved his hand and recalled the gold-devouring bug. He looked at Xiaoya and sighed. Xiaoya, I really don't want to hurt you. But you can't force me to do it. Xiaoya seemed to be very afraid of Bai Fei's methods. She begged, yes, this concubine knows. This concubine only accidentally let it slip in front of Master. If it was anywhere else, this concubine definitely wouldn't. Get up. Bai Fei amiably helped Xiaoya up. Although Xiaoya's skin was smooth and tender in his hands, Bai Fei was not moved at all. He said, "Cultivation is an extremely dangerous path. This world is also a world where the strong prey on the weak. This concubine Bai was able to cultivate painstakingly to this stage only because of her cautiousness. Although on the Dawn Rain continent, there are people who despise this concubine Bai's character and disdain this concubine Bai's actions, but now, this concubine Bai has become a nascent soul master. And they, probably haven't even cultivated to the late stage of golden core. When they see this concubine Bai, all their previous disdain and contempt will turn into longing and respect. At that time, they should know that this concubine Bai's previous actions were correct and wise." "Yes, master. Xiaoya was wrong," Xiaoya whispered. Xiaoya still trusts others too much. "Even though Xiaoya has been suppressed in the demon array for so long, I still can't change this bad habit, so you won't be able to achieve great things." Bai Fei nodded. "You can only be this concubine Bai's assistant. Hee, it's this concubine's honor to be able to command heaven and earth with this master." Xiaoya didn't dare to be ostentatious and said with a slight smile. Bai Fei waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Go back and rest. Since this cultivation method has already appeared, I'm afraid that the plan of defeat you Immortal Alliance has changed. Let's not talk about whether that alliance master can return or not, even the capable person they're looking for won't come again. This concubine Bai still has to think of a way to get the secret of that transmission tunnel from Defeat You Immortal Alliance. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 49-59. Then, Bai Fei used his hand to point at the bracelet on his left wrist. The bracelet once again emitted an earthy yellow light screen, and Xiao Yu was sucked into it. When Xiao Yu fell into a world, Bai Fei frowned and looked at the immortal artifact on his left wrist that was similar to the heaven and earth bracelet. His eyes were filled with caution. However, after frowning and thinking for a moment, he seemed to have no good ideas. He could only whisper, "Forget it. After I obtain the cultivation method of the spirit puppet, I can't let Xiao Yu stay in this world anymore. If this secret is known by others, what would happen?" Bai Fei sat down cross-legged, picked up a jade slip, and looked at it for a moment. He unconsciously clapped his hands again and sighed, "Zhang Xiaohua is really a god. If I can become a disciple of such an expert, why should I worry about the immortal path? It's a pity that this senior and the power controlled by this senior have a big plan. If I go, I'll just be a chess piece. I'd better cultivate honestly." Thinking of this, Bai Fei reached out and took out the bronze plate. As he formed a seal, the ghost servant appeared from the void. He immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, master." How's the situation?" Bai Fei was not so polite to the ghost servant and asked indifferently. "Reporting to master." The ghost servant replied, "Just like a few days ago, that human is only sitting cross-legged and cultivating. It's similar to what master said about closed-door cultivation. He didn't even move." "Good." Bai Fei took out a dark green bead and threw it to the ghost servant. There was some fog inside the bead, and several frightened and panicked wandering souls came out of the fog. The ghost servant opened his mouth and swallowed the bead. He closed his pitch-black eyes and looked like he was enjoying it. "Continue monitoring. If there are any unusual movements, immediately report to this old man." Bai Fei waved his hand, indicating for the ghost servant to leave. This Taoist master Xiao is working hard. Bai Fei did not doubt him, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. If he was an ordinary rogue cultivator, I might have helped him a little. However, even if he is not a demon, he is a human cultivator with a demon cultivation method. I will also consider it. But if he's a demon, his loyalty will be discounted. If you don't let me use a forbidden technique on him, how can I be at ease letting him follow me? Yes, I should consider this. After all, I'm going to return to the Dawn Rain continent now. Little you, ghost servant, and the others can't be exposed in front of others. With Daoist Shao helping me take care of everything, he'll be a useful helper. When there's a chance, I'll test it out first. If he's really reliable, I don't mind giving him some opportunities. Putting aside Bai Fei's benevolent heart, wanting to recruit Xiao Hua as his helper, time passed quickly. Half a month had passed, and the cold wind was biting cold. Snowballs the size of a fist fell from the sky like hailstones, covering the mountains near the worry-free manor. The flames from before had disappeared, and were replaced by ice and snow sculptures. Looking at it from afar, it had a different kind of charm. A white crane spread its wings and flew down from the red clouds in the distance. On top of it stood a young man wearing a Daoist robe. This young man's eyebrows were light, and the temperament between his brows was slightly lazy. The most puzzling thing was that the young man was obviously a cultivator, but he didn't use any power. Instead, he let the cold wind blow his Daoist robe up, and let the snowballs hit his face and body. Ga. The white crane let out a clear cry and flapped its wings. It didn't fly in a straight line, but circled in the air a few times. There were even a few times when its head was facing down. The cultivator was caught off guard, and his body slipped off the white crane's body. However, he only stepped a few feet in the air. The cultivator's body slid, and very strangely, he flashed to the left and stood firmly on the white crane's body. This cultivator wasn't angry. He used his foot to tap the white crane's neck, and scolded in a low voice, "You evil creature, you actually dare to scheme against me? Don't tell me you don't want to see Qing Wan." Ga. When the white crane heard this, it immediately let out a sad cry. Its originally raised head quietly lowered and hid under its wings. It looked like it had been wronged. Okay. The cultivator didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I was just joking with you. If I didn't bring you here, how could I snatch this job from someone else?" Ga. The white crane immediately became happy. It flapped its wings and charged toward the ice mountain even faster than before. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the mountain was getting closer. The snow became even heavier, and it almost covered the sky. Several disciples of the worry-free mountain manor flew out on their flying swords and blocked the cultivator's path. They shouted, "Which senior has come to my worry-free mountain manor? Please show your token." This young master is Gu, a mere envoy of the Southwest. The cultivator smiled and threw a golden token to the cultivator in front of him. The cultivator took the token and looked at it before respectfully saying, "Lord Envoy, please wait a moment. I'll go report to the manor master." "Okay, thank you." The nascent soul cultivator named Gu had a good temper. He smiled and waved his hand. After the cultivator took the token and left, Gu smiled and said, "We don't need to wait here. Let's slowly fly over." "Senior, please." The patrolling disciples didn't dare to say anything. They looked at each other and agreed. Gu flew down from the white crane's back and flew a few feet forward. The white crane was a little impatient at the side. With a long cry, it spread its wings and flew towards the worry-free manor. At the same time, a similar cry could be heard from within the manor. Caw. A ball of green light appeared from the snowstorm. Yi Yun's Qing Wan seemed to have sensed the arrival of the white crane and also flew out. Upon hearing Qing Wan's cry, the white crane moved like lightning, breaking through the snow several times faster than before and landing beside Qing Wan. Ga. The blue Wan chirped happily, flapping its wings and dancing in the air. The white crane also chirped happily, flapping its wings and dancing with the blue Wan. For a moment, the sky above worry-free mountain villa was filled with light and shadows. The wind weakened, and the snow disappeared. When the patrolling disciples saw this, they were even more relieved. They smiled and felt warmth in their hearts. "Lord Envoy." Since the Qing Yuan came out, Yi Yun wouldn't be far away. Just as Ji Yu was waiting, Yi Yun, Bai Jun Feng, and company also flew out from the worry-free mountain manor. Before they got close, Bai Jun Feng's face was filled with shock as he shouted, "Why did you personally come?" After Bai Jun Feng, Yu Biqiong's mouth revealed a trace of jealousy. She glanced at Yi Yun, who had an unnatural expression, and smiled. "Senior brother Bai, what are you saying? The worry-free mountain manor is not a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. Why can't Lord Envoy come? Moreover, if the worry-free mountain manor is really a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, Lord Envoy should come here for our safety." The Qing Yuan and the white crane were dancing in the sky. Bai Jun Feng wasn't blind, so how could he not know? He only smiled and didn't say anything. Ji Yu didn't hide it. He looked at Yi Yun and asked, "Yi Yun, did it go smoothly this time? You still have old injuries, so you don't have to work too hard." As he spoke, he took out a jade bottle and handed it over. He said with concern, "This is the Emerald Firefly pill I asked for from Lord Alliance Master. It's very useful for recovering the primordial spirit. Why don't you take it?" "Lord." Yi Yun didn't take the Emerald Firefly pill. Instead, she said respectfully, "Junior's injuries can't be healed by ordinary pills. Junior thanks Lord for your concern." Ji Yu frowned. He didn't know why Yi Yun was suddenly so cold. His hand froze in the air. He didn't know whether to take it back or pass the jade bottle to Yi Yun. "Junior brother Ji, why are you here?" Just as Ji Yu was feeling awkward, a voice came from the worry-free mountain manor. Another late nascent soul stage cultivator flew out. This cultivator had the appearance of an old man. He wore a royal blue robe and looked like an ordinary rich man. However, there were several valiant golden core stage cultivators following behind him. Each of them had an imposing appearance and looked extraordinary. "Senior brother Gao." Ji Yu took the opportunity to keep the jade bottle and flew up. He cupped his hands and smiled at the cultivator. "Junior hasn't seen senior brother in a long time. I specially came to see you, Tisk." Senior brother Gao looked at the blue swan and white crane in the sky and pursed his lips. "How can I not know what you're thinking? Come, since you're here, why don't you stay in my worry-free mountain manor for a few days and let the blue swan and white crane have a good time together?" Ji Yu blushed slightly and said embarrassedly, "Senior brother, you're joking. Junior actually wanted to stay in your Shangri-La for a few more days. However, Lord Special Envoy has ordered that cultivators who want to participate in the selection should hurry to the designated place to participate in the training." "Oh?" Senior brother Gao looked up at the snowy sky and asked in confusion, "This snowstorm is so heavy. I'm afraid the Wuming mountain range is also very cold. Why is Lord Alliance Master so anxious?" Ji Yu shrugged and replied, "Junior brother doesn't know about that. Junior brother is only responsible for sending the cultivators who want to participate in the selection. Since that's the case, junior brother, please wait for a moment. I'll get the disciples to inform the two of them." Senior brother Gao nodded. "Two?" Ji Yu was stunned and looked at senior brother Gao in disbelief. He then turned to look at Bai Jun Feng and the others and asked curiously, "Just two cultivators?" Bai Jun Feng smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, "My lord, you should know that the Heavenly Alliance now has complete nascent soul cultivation methods. Who would still risk their lives in the Lost Land? To tell you the truth, when we were in Tong Lake City that day, we had already recruited 23 nascent soul early stage and mid-stage nascent soul seniors. They all agreed to return to the Immortal Alliance with us. We even registered their names. However, just as we were about to set off, Senior Zhang sent the cultivation method jade slips to the auction in Tong Lake City. When these seniors received the news, they didn't say a word to us and immediately rushed to the auction on the 9th floor. We couldn't stop them. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and... Chapter 4960. At this point, Bai Junfeng looked at the worry-free manor in the snow and lowered his voice. As for these two seniors, I've deceived them. Then, Bai Junfeng explained the whole story. Finally, he said, these two seniors are rogue cultivators. They had just arrived in Tong Lake City and hadn't heard any news about the cultivation technique jade slips before they were brought out of Tong Lake City by us. Then, we rushed to Worry-Free Manor without stopping. They shouldn't have heard any other news. Bai Junfeng naturally didn't dare to hide the fact that Bai Fei and Yi Yun knew each other. Although he didn't hide anything in his words, how could the sensitive Ji Yu not know what he wanted to know? Facing Ji Yu's gaze, Yi Yun lowered her head naturally. Everything was understood without words. Ji Yu already understood why Yi Yun treated him like that. He. Ji Yu smiled and said, the Defeat Valley Immortal Alliance has always been open and aboveboard. Why should we hide these things? Although the Heaven Alliance already has a cultivation method, it's still a cultivation method for spiritual roots. No one knows if the current cultivators can use it. Going to the Lost Land is a bright path. Instead of hiding, why don't we just tell them directly and let them decide whether they want to go or not? Ahem. Senior brother Gao coughed and said, Junior brother, don't be angry. After all, this was the Alliance head's arrangement. I heard that the other disciples didn't find many suitable cultivators, and Bai Junfeng and the others only found these two fellow Taoists after going through untold hardships. If you drive them away with a single sentence, not only will you be guilty, even Bai Junfeng and the others won't be able to do anything. Moreover, the Alliance Master sent a total of 5 special envoys this time. If we don't find many cultivators, won't the special envoys be defeated by the other special envoys? Alright. Ji Yu thought for a while and glanced at Yi Yun. He waved his hand impatiently and said, I'll listen to you and treat me as a mute. The disciples of Worry-Free Manor left, and not long after, Xiaohua and Bai Fei flew over. Senior Marshal Brother Gao smiled and greeted, I am Gao Xian, the Manor Lord of Worry-Free Manor. When the two Dao friends came, I wasn't in the manor. When this old man returned, he wanted to pay a visit to the two of you. However, seeing that the two of you were cultivating diligently, this old man did not dare to disturb you. I am truly sorry. Naturally, Bai Fei was the first to speak. He smiled and returned the greeting. Manor Master Gao, you're too kind. We're the ones who are sorry to have disturbed your manor. Moreover, your union has given us such a precious opportunity. We can't even thank you enough. Don't you agree, Taoist Master Xiao? Of course. Xiaohua's gaze moved from the green wan and white crane to Bai Fei with a meaningful look. He smiled and said, not to mention going to that place, just being able to meditate in this picturesque villa is also I's fortune. Bai Fei naturally saw the intimacy between the green wan and white crane. The reason why Ji Yu didn't recall the white crane was probably to let him see it. However, Bai Fei ignored it and chatted cheerfully with Gao Xian and Xiaohua. It could be seen how scheming he was. Yi Yun naturally wanted to recall the green wan, but the white crane didn't leave, so she didn't dare to act rashly. After Bai Fei appeared, she had been paying attention to Bai Fei's expression. However, Bai Fei's gaze only swept past the two spiritual birds, and there was no special change. Only then did Yi Yun's heart gradually relax. This old man wanted to keep the two Dao friends for a few more days, but Lord Union is thirsty for talent. This. Gao Xian raised his hand and pointed at Ji Yu. Lord Union specially invited Junior Marshal Brother Ji Yu of our Immortal Alliance to welcome you. He didn't even give you time to set up a farewell banquet. It seems that this old man is destined to be rude. Greetings, Lord Union Envoy. Bai Fei respectfully said rudely to Ji Yu. His eyes slightly narrowed, and there was an indescribable meaning in his gaze. Xiaohua smiled and casually cupped his hands at the side. However, at this moment, no one would care about Xiaohua. They all looked at Bai Fei and Ji Yu. Sure enough, when Bai Fei bowed, Ji Yu didn't return the greeting. Instead, He looked straight at Bai Fei, his gaze like lightning, and his expression like frost. Bai Fei's figure was like a mountain, and his etiquette was thorough. He didn't get up, as if he was waiting and looking forward to it. Ahem. How could Gao Xian let Ji be rude here? He hurriedly coughed twice and said, Junior Marshal Brother Ji, it's getting late. Since you want to hurry back, why don't you set off now? I won't let you enter the manor. Huh, fellow Dao Bai, please get up. Ji Yu seemed to have woken up. Although there was a smile on his mouth, there wasn't much of a smile on his face. He raised his hand and said, I just had some opportunities and made a few more steps in my cultivation. Actually, I'm about the same age as you, so there's no need to be so polite. It turns out that Lord Union Envoy is a genius from the heavens. Then I'm even more disrespectful. Bai Fei's mouth slightly revealed an imperceptible sneer. He hurriedly put on a fake smile and flattered him. I don't dare. Ji Yu said proudly, there are countless capable people in the Heavenly Alliance. My opportunity is nothing. As long as you go to the Lost Land, you'll have more opportunities. Phew. Hearing that Ji Yu's words were reliable, Gao Xian breathed a sigh of relief. He looked around and said, Go, bring me the spiritual wine. I'll give you 3 toasts and send Junior Marshal Brother Ji off. Although Gao Xian was toasting the 3 nascent soul cultivators, Bai Junfeng and the others naturally couldn't be left behind. Gao Xian raised his wine cup and clinked glasses with Ji Yu, Bai Fei, Xiao Hua, Bai Junfeng and the others. Yi Yun stayed behind, and Gao Xian even looked at Yi Yun meaningfully. Yi Yun felt unnatural, as if there was a thorn in her back. However, she felt helpless in her heart. She knew Ji Yu's infatuation, and she was even grateful that Ji Yu came all the way to pick her up. However, things had changed with the passage of time. Now was not the time. She could only smile apologetically and was speechless. Seeing that Ji Yu left with Bai Fei and the others, Gao Xian shook his head with a bitter smile. As a bystander, he could only feel sorry for Ji Yu, who was a late nascent soul cultivator. Ji Yu flew for more than 10 miles and was far away from the worry-free manor. He immediately raised his hand and the white crane flew down from the sky and landed in front of his feet. Ji Yu stepped on it and saw that the green one also landed beside the white crane. He smiled and said to Yi Yun, Little Yi, let them take the flying boat. You follow me on the spiritual bird. Ji Yu didn't call her Little Yi in front of Gao Xian and the others. Now that he called her, it was naturally provocative. Ji Yu even glanced at Bai Fei. It wasn't out of Ji Yu's expectations. Bai Fei's eyes twitched a few times. Unfortunately, what Ji Yu didn't expect was that Yi Yun actually said respectfully, Senior Ji, this junior can take the flying boat with Senior Bai and the others. As she said that, Yi Yun waved at the green wand, wanting to keep the green wand into the spirit storage ring. However, the green wand and the white crane were very close. No matter how Yi Yun waved, it didn't move at all. It only flapped its wings and moved closer to the white crane. Xiao Hua laughed secretly, damn it, when we rushed over from Tong Lake City, we were in a hurry. Now, there's a good show to watch. Alright. Ji Yu helplessly flew down from the white crane and instructed Bai Junfeng, this old man will also take the flying boat. Bai Junfeng, take out the flying boat. Yes, yes. Bai Junfeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly took out the flying boat and respectfully asked Ji Yu to go first. His flying boat was probably the first time it felt so cramped. Senior Sister Yu. Seeing Bai Fei and Ji Yu staring at each other, although they didn't speak, the atmosphere was very tense. From time to time, the two of them would look at her. Yi Yun's heart was filled with sweetness and awkwardness. She couldn't help but ask in a low voice, how about you accompany me on the green one? Hee hee. Yu Biqiong laughed, your green one has been on a diet for the sake of the white crane. She can't stand Senior Sister. You can take the district envoy's white crane. Chapter 49-61. Damn it. Jiyu simply threw away his identity as the prefectural envoy and cursed in a low voice. How could you forget where you cultivate? Are you deliberately making fun of this young master? Bai Fei rolled his eyes and replied, what's wrong? Fellow Daoist, you just realized it now. Damn it. Xiao Hua originally wanted to say a few words of advice, but the more he saw the more ridiculous the two were talking, the more like two young men fighting over a lover. He cursed in his heart, and with a flash of his body, he landed at the tail of the flying shuttle and sat down cross-legged. His mind entered the space. He and the Thunderbolt Immortal had already deduced the primordial spirit cultivation method to the last step of the unifying the way. It was really crucial. How could he have the time to talk nonsense with these two little things? Seeing Xiao Hua leave, Bai Junfeng was a little dumbfounded. He drove the flying shuttle, not daring to slack off. He could only listen and watch. This was a secret of nascent soul cultivators fighting over a woman. He didn't know if Ji Yu and Bai Fei would kill him to prevent him from leaking the secret after arriving at the place. Bai Junfeng's worries were naturally groundless. Bai Fei and Ji Yu confronted each other like fighting cocks. Except for a few words of sarcasm, they didn't really fight. After flying for more than 10 days, Bai Junfeng's heart finally relaxed when he saw a flying shuttle about 1,000 feet in size in the sky in front of him. On the body of the flying shuttle, countless runes were engraved. These runes formed the shape of clouds and mist. The nearby spiritual chi of heaven and earth rushed in, and the runes emitted a faint brilliance. Thus, the clouds began to overflow and the mist began to spread. The huge flying shuttle had a kind of momentum that seemed to be activated. Many disciples stood at the edge of the flying boat. They were all wearing bright armor and holding spear-shaped celestial weapons. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the sky not only crashed into the flying boat, but also fell on their bright armor. Naturally, there were talisman scripts on the bright armor. These talisman scripts were very agile, swimming on the armor like tadpoles. These talisman scripts even floated out of the light of the bright armor and connected in midair. A murderous magic formation had been quietly set up on the flying boat. Yi Yun and Yu Biqiong were riding the white crane and the blue one in front of the flying shuttle. When they saw the flying shuttle, they had already stopped their spiritual birds and landed on both sides of the shuttle. Even so, there were still disciples on patrol descending from the sky and blocking the shuttle. A disciple in the late Golden Core stage in front asked sternly, "Who are you?" "I'm the special envoy of the Northwest 2nd District." Ji Yu couldn't vent his anger on Bai Fei. Hearing the disciples on patrol's unkind tone, he was already angry. He jumped up from the flying shuttle and roaring, "What? You won't let me pass?" As he spoke, he released the pressure of a late nascent soul stage cultivator. How could the group of Golden Core stage cultivators withstand his pressure? They all trembled and were about to fall to the ground. So powerful, so murderous, so powerful. Bai Fei said coldly on the flying shuttle, "He's just a disciple on patrol. He's just following the rules. Look at your token. Do you have to be so ruthless? Isn't he just a late nascent soul stage senior? How dare you trample the rules of the Immortal Alliance under your feet?" Yi Yun also quickly flew up and tried to resist the nascent soul stage pressure. She whispered, "Gee. Lord, this is the special envoy's flying shuttle. We don't dare to be rash." Humph. Seeing Yi Yun fly over, Ji Yu had long retracted his nascent soul pressure with a pained heart. However, he still fiercely glared at the few Golden Core disciples and said, "Since you are a patrolling disciple, you should properly ask questions. Why are you roaring like this for no reason? Do you think you're all evil?" With that, Ji Yu raised his hand and threw the token to the Golden Core stage disciple. The disciple was confused. He didn't know what he said wrong. Whenever a disciple of the Immortal Alliance approached the special envoy's flying shuttle, they would sternly shout as usual. First, to remind them to slow down. Second, to remind the flying shuttle to be on guard. Who knew what was wrong with this nascent soul stage cultivator today? However, looking at the token in his hand, Gu was a real district envoy. Even if he was one level higher than them, they couldn't do anything about it. They could only smile and say, "District envoy, this junior has neglected you. This way please, Gu wasn't an arrogant person. After getting angry, he regretted it. Seeing the disciple on patrol respectfully, he took the token and nodded. Just as he was about to follow the disciple onto the special envoy's flying shuttle, another small shuttle flew over. The Golden Core stage disciple immediately flew up and sternly shouted, "Who's there?" Unfortunately, he only shouted, "Who's there?" before remembering the awkwardness from before. He didn't dare to say, "Who's there?" loudly, and his voice became much softer, making it sound really strange. Disciple Su Xia. On the flying boat, a female gold core cultivator with a mediocre face and a slightly plump body quickly flew out. She handed over the token and respectfully said, "I'm here on the orders of the special envoy to bring the 3 seniors here." The Golden Core stage disciple on patrol took the token and looked at it. He simply said in a warm voice, "Fellow Daoist Su, you've worked hard. Please invite the 3 seniors over. It just so happens that there are 2 seniors here. You can all board the special envoy's flying shuttle together." The woman called Su Xia was slightly stunned. She had never heard the disciple on the special envoy's flying shuttle speak so softly. She couldn't help but look at the Golden Core stage disciple. Aside from confusion, there was also a hint of a smile in her eyes. The Golden Core stage disciple was startled and hurriedly scolded, "Hurry up, don't make the seniors anxious." "Yes, yes." Only then did Su Xia hurriedly withdraw her gaze and turn to land on the flying shuttle. Xiaohua clearly saw that the flying shuttle was similar to the one under his feet. There were 3 cultivators on it, 1 in the middle stage of nascent soul stage and 2 in the early stage of nascent soul stage. The middle stage nascent soul stage cultivator was an old man with a ruddy complexion and 5 strands of long beard fluttering in the wind. He had a rather sage-like appearance. However, that middle stage nascent soul stage cultivator didn't cause Xiaohua's gaze to linger on him. Xiaohua swept a glance at him, but his gaze landed on the last 2 early stage nascent soul stage cultivators who walked out from the flying shuttle. The early stage nascent soul stage cultivator in the front was a tall man with a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes, similar to a farmer in the countryside. However, when Xiaohua looked at this man, his face unconsciously revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He secretly muttered in his heart, "Damn it, what's all this? Our human race's Daoist sects went to the Lost Land to search for a chance of survival. Why are all these filthy things here? What does this have to do with them? Do you think that the Yilin continent's human race's Daoist sects are flourishing, that the Xiaoyu continent is a place where you can do whatever you want?" Xiaohua's gaze swept across this man, and then landed on the last nascent soul stage cultivator. This cultivator was a woman, but this woman's appearance was covered by a snow-white handkerchief. Her appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, just from the curves of the naked body wrapped under the snow-white clothes, no one would doubt that this woman had exceptional beauty. The moment this woman walked out of the flying shuttle, all the male cultivators' gazes were attracted. However, Xiaohua's gaze only paused for a moment before moving away again. He frowned slightly, and unconsciously muttered in his heart, "Damn it, what's going on? When did the Xiaoyu continent become a hot commodity? Not to mention the Immortal Alliance master who wants to go over, the devil race also wants to go over. Now that a demon race has appeared, she actually also wants to go over? This silver-white wolf race, what is she going over for?" Xiaohua was gloomy, but that patrolling Golden Core stage disciple seemed to have awoken from a dream. He hurriedly moved his gaze away from the female cultivator's snow-white body with difficulty, and respectfully said, "Seniors, this way please." Xiaohua and the rest boarded the flying shuttle. That middle stage nascent soul stage old man looked at Xiaohua and Bai Fei, and cupped his hands, saying, "Fellow cultivators, I am Daoist Yuan Kong, may I know how to address you too? Hee, this one is Bai Fei. Bai Fei greeted people with ease. Seeing Daoist Yuan Kong looking over, he had already gone up to greet him. Xiao Hua also smiled, saying, this one is Daoist Xiao, hee, looks like fellow cultivator Bai is the leader of the two. Daoist Yuan Kong smiled, and turned to the other two cultivators, saying, fellow cultivators, please come over. Since we are fated to board the special envoy's flying shuttle together, why don't we join hands? What do you think? This one is Zhuang Chen, greetings fellow cultivators. That farmer cultivator said. The masked silver wolf respectfully said, this one is Beauty Yu, greetings fellow cultivators. Beauty Yu? Bai Fei smiled and returned the greeting, saying, fellow cultivator, your name is indeed like your person. Fellow cultivator, please don't laugh at me. Beauty Yu's voice was slightly hoarse, not ethereal and clear. However, this hoarse voice, in the ears of men, made them even more fantastical and even more sexy. Fellow cultivator Bai. After the 5 nascent soul stage cultivators finished greeting each other, Jiyu, who was not far away, said with a smile, this old man has already sent you all to the special envoy's flying shuttle. This old man has already completed his mission. Next, the special envoy's subordinate disciples will receive you all. This old man wishes you a smooth selection, haha. With that said, Jiyu waved his hand and said to Yi Yun, Yu Biqiong, and the other disciples, follow this old man. Yi Yun looked at Bai Fei and nodded slightly. Her eyes were filled with concern, and then she followed Jiyu. Fellow cultivator Bai. Seeing Bai Fei looking at Jiyu, Daoist Yuan Kong was somewhat puzzled, saying, you are familiar with this late stage, nascent soul stage senior? He's just a lunatic, who knows him? Bai Fei was not afraid of Jiyu hearing him and said with a cold smile. He even looked at Jiyu's back. Sure enough, Jiyu's figure stopped slightly as if he wanted to turn around. However, when he saw Yi Yun, who had her head lowered and was somewhat unhappy, he did not turn his head around in the end. Damn it. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes. He was somewhat puzzled and thought to himself, what is this Bai Fei doing? Isn't he always cautious? Why is he so reckless today? Shoo. Daoist Yuan Kong hurriedly put his hand to his mouth and reminded, fellow cultivator Bai, don't be angry. We still need to borrow the power of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance to go to the abandoned land. Hee, this one was rash, sorry. Bai Fei smiled and did not say anything else. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect a gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4962. The Gold Core disciple led the 5 people into the cabin. The cabin was quite large, and the space was divided into many quiet rooms. The Gold Core disciple led the 5 people to the 5 adjacent quiet rooms. He took out 5 jade tablets and respectfully handed them over. He said, seniors, because time is a little tight, the seniors who arrived on the special envoy's flying ship will not arrive at the same time. Therefore, the special envoy has told us not to specially welcome the seniors. After seniors arrive, each of you can choose a quiet room to rest. If you need anything, feel free to tell the disciple on duty. The special envoy's flying ship will depart for the selection in 3 days. Where will the selection be held? Bai Fei took the jade tablet and asked with raised eyebrows. The Golden Core disciple smiled. Senior, please no. Junior doesn't know about these things. Moreover, according to the Lord's special envoy, he doesn't know either. I'm afraid he will only know when the Alliance Head Command token arrives in 3 days. Bai Fei asked curiously, it's just a selection. Is there a need to be so secretive? Apologies, Junior doesn't know. If it was before, the Golden Core disciple would have already left in a huff. However, he saw that Bai Fei dared to call Jiyu a madman. He also didn't know the background of this person in front of him, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Forget it. Either way, I don't know anything. It's fine if I don't ask. Daoist Yuankong activated the jade tablet and opened a quiet room. He smiled and said, "How about fellow Taoists come to my quiet room and we can discuss how to face the selection?" Although Daoist Yuankong said, "fellow Taoists," he was looking at Bai Fei. When Xiao Hua heard this, he understood that Daoist Yuankong was discussing with Bai Fei about the authority to command the 5 of them. If Bai Fei agreed to be Daoist Yuankong's temporary leader, then Bai Fei would agree to go in. If Bai Fei didn't want to go in, then it meant he wanted to take the initiative. At that time, Daoist Yuankong would have to reconsider. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, Bai Fei didn't hesitate and smiled. Of course. Daoist Yuankong is a person of virtue and prestige. This one wants to hear what fellow Daoist has to say. The 5 of them were harmonious and entered the quiet room with smiles on their faces. The quiet room wasn't small, but there weren't many things. Other than a table and a praying mat, there was only a plate of spirit fruits on the table. Daoist Yuankong smiled and took out some spirit fruits and wine from his universe bracelet. He placed them on the table and said, "Come, try this rain fruit and meridian wine." He. Zhuangchen was so happy that he didn't care whether there was a futon on the ground or not. He sat down and picked up the fist-sized rain fruit and said with a smile, "Senior, your rain fruit is pretty good. It's a pity that you don't have enough of it. After eating it last time, I haven't had a chance to taste it again." Beauty Yu did not take the rain fruit, but she took out a meditation cushion from her storage ring and placed it beside the jade table before sitting down. Xiao Hua and Bai Fei glanced at each other. They both took out their prayer mats and sat beside the jade table. They picked up the rain birth fruit and tasted it while quietly listening to Daoist Yuankong's explanation. Seeing that the 4 of them were seated, Daoist Yuankong walked to the back of the jade table and sat on the praying mat. He looked at the 4 of them and said with a smile, "This old man is a rogue cultivator. Minister Zhuang and Beauty Yu are also rogue cultivators. I wonder if fellow Daoist Bai and Daoist Xiao are also rogue cultivators." We are also rogue cultivators. Bai Fei said with a smile, "Actually, if we weren't rogue cultivators, who would take the risk to go to the Lost Land? Furthermore, I can also say that most of the cultivators on this special envoy's flying ship are rogue cultivators." "That's right." Daoist Yuankong nodded. "Rogue cultivators have a hard time cultivating. However, the good thing is that the Lin continent is very big. We also have places to cultivate. However, the heavens are unfair. Now that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has changed, we rogue cultivators cannot compare to immortal sects and clans. They have the foundation, and the time to resist this change. However, we rogue cultivators can't. If we can't find a way to cultivate, our cultivation will come to an end." At this point, Daoist Yuankong sighed and said, I didn't tell fellow Daoist Zhuang and Fairy Yu that I don't have much time left. If I can't find anything in the Lost Land, I'm afraid I won't be able to see you guys again." "Ah?" Zhuangchen was stunned and said curiously, "Senior's age is actually so old." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist, don't be discouraged. There will always be opportunities, as long as fellow Daoist doesn't give up hope." Many thanks for Daoist Zhao's encouragement. Daoist Yuankong said with a smile, "Actually, at this old man's level, I have already seen through everything. Therefore, when I heard that Liu Immortal Alliance wanted to go to the Lost Land, I was first moved. However, this old man doesn't understand. What's so special about the Lost Land that it actually made Liu Immortal Alliance so much fanfare? Not only did they find so many cultivators, they also have to do some selection. What kind of divine ability or secret technique do they need?" Bai Fei frowned and said, "It's said that this transfer tunnel goes through the Wu Meng mountain range. That Wu Meng mountain range is the world of soul beasts and soul cultivators. Soul cultivators and soul beasts never leave the Wu Meng mountain range and are very mysterious. No one knows what kind of divine ability they have. If there are no accidents, Liu Immortal Alliance is looking for a secret technique that can restrain soul cultivators and soul beasts. Xiaohua continued, I heard that the 5 elements escape techniques are restricted in that transfer tunnel, so they might need other flying techniques. Therefore, they have to choose. Beauty Yu also spoke up, no matter how they choose, they have to tell us where to choose, right? Making it so mysterious, this concubine is also somewhat regretful. Everyone spoke up one after another, but they couldn't make heads or tails of it. After discussing for less than an hour, there was still no conclusion. Finally, Bai Fei stood up and said, no matter what, since the 5 of us have decided to join forces, I ask Senior Yuan Kong to be the temporary leader. We will listen to Senior's instructions and strive to pass this so-called selection. Bai Fei stood up, and Xiao Hua and the others also stood up. Daoist Yuan Kong nodded and said, all right, then this old man will reluctantly accept. When the time comes, if this old man can't make a decision, everyone can discuss it together. Afterwards, Daoist Yuan Kong sent Xiao Hua and the others out of the quiet room and cupped his hands to bid farewell to everyone. Xiao Hua was about to activate the jade tablet to enter his quiet room when Bai Fei suddenly said, that's right, Daoist Xiao, this Bai thought of something again. Can I trouble you for a while? Xiao Hua was puzzled. Seeing Zhuang Chen and Beauty Yu tactfully enter the quiet room, he nodded and said, what is it, fellow Daoist Bai? Come to my quiet room, fellow Daoist. Bai Fei's expression didn't change as he said indifferently. He turned around and activated the jade tablet, walking into the quiet room. Xiao Hua followed in, not knowing what Bai Fei wanted to say. Fellow Daoist, take a look at this first. Bai Fei raised his hand and took out a jade slip, handing it to Xiao Hua and said. Xiao Hua received the jade slip in confusion and released his divine sense to explore. However, Xiao Hua merely took a look and frowned again. He looked at Bai Fei strangely and said, This is the spiritual root selection method that's been very popular recently, right? Why are you letting I see this? Hee, take a look at this again. Bai Fei didn't answer directly, instead, he took out another jade slip. Although Xiao Hua already knew what this jade slip was, his expression couldn't help but greatly change again. He exclaimed, Fellow Daoist? This is the spiritual root cultivation method that can cultivate to the spirit severing stage? I remember, even the Dao Alliance only has golden core cultivation method. Where did you get this from? Hee, it's not just the spirit severing cultivation method. Bai Fei laughed coldly and said, currently, the Heavenly Alliance already has a complete nascent soul cultivation method, from chi refinement to tribulation transcendence. How is that possible? Xiao Hua shook his head like a rattledrum and said, it is said that the Heavenly Alliance's Long Shensi can't modify the primordial soul cultivation method. How can the Dao Alliance's Alliance Master modify the Mahayana cultivation method? Moreover, if the Dao Alliance could modify it, why would they wait until now? Daoist Xiao, there is something you don't know. Bai Fei explained, there is a mysterious senior Zhang Xiaohua. Bai Fei told him the information that Xiao Yu found out and finally said, actually, before I found the sale pavilion in Tong Lake City, I already went to Tong Lake City's auction house. What? Xiao Hua immediately interrupted Bai Fei and said anxiously, fellow Daoist Bai, you were at Tong Lake City's auction house that day? In that case, fellow Daoist Bai also has a complete nascent soul cultivation method? Of course. Bai Fei nodded without hesitation and said, if Daoist Xiao needs it, of course I need it. Xiao Hua was also resolute and decisive. He waved his hand and took out 30 top-grade crystals and said, I will use these top-grade crystals to exchange for your 3 cultivation method jade slips. Hee, 30 top-grade crystals probably won't be enough. Bai Fei smiled and said, no matter what, you need at least 300. This. Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. He then took out 20 top-grade crystals and said, I only have 50 top-grade crystals here. If you want to exchange, I can give them to you. If you don't want to exchange, I will go to other auction houses to find. What does fellow Taoist mean? Bai Fei narrowed his eyes and asked, could it be that fellow Taoist doesn't want to go to the lost place? Nonsense. Xiao Hua said without thinking, I already have a cultivation method that I can cultivate. Why would I go to the lost place? I still want to keep my life to cultivate. At this point, Xiao Hua suddenly seemed to have realized something. He looked at Bai Fei and said, that's right, fellow Taoist Bai. You already have a cultivation method that you can cultivate. Why would you still want to go to the lost place? Don't tell me it's because of that Miss Yi Yun. Miss Yi Yun is one of the reasons. Bai Fei didn't hide it and said, that day, I went to the sale pavilion first. However, I arrived at the auction house under some mysterious circumstances. Who knew? I actually met Senior Zhang selling a cultivation method in the auction house. After I got the cultivation method, I went to the sale pavilion. I just wanted to take a look and then leave. In the end, I met Sir and Yi Yun. Later, after I heard Bai Juanfeng's introduction, I had the idea of going to the lost place. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4963. Why? Xiao Hua looked at Bai Fei and asked curiously, could it be that there are other benefits to going to the Lost Land? Fellow Taoist, please listen to my explanation. Bai Fei said confidently, I think that first, this nascent soul cultivation method is based on spiritual roots after all, and we cultivators may not be able to use it. Xiao Hua's expression changed, and he nodded blankly, that's right. Fellow Taoist Bai is right. Second. Bai Fei continued, you, me, and even Taoist Yuan Kong and other rogue cultivators, forget it, Taoist Yuan Kong has already explained this reason, so I won't repeat it again. In short, I'd rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. We're just insignificant nascent soul cultivators in the Heaven Alliance, but in the Lost Land, we'll become nascent soul cultivators. That seems reasonable. Xiao Hua hesitated, but then he hurriedly said, since it's the Lost Land, the spiritual herbs inside are also rare, right? If we go, wouldn't we be inferior to the Heaven Alliance? I haven't been there, so I can't talk nonsense here. Bai Fei said, however, I think that since the Dao sect has declined, spiritual herbs will definitely grow all over the mountains and plains, and no one will recognize them. Maybe there will even be spiritual herbs that are thousands of years old. Maybe. Xiao Hua answered vaguely. Finally, Bai Fei said sincerely, regardless of whether you go or not, I'm prepared to go. And I believe that my decision won't be wrong. When I go to the Lost Land, I'll definitely be alone. Taoist Yuan Kong, Zhuang Chen, and Beauty Yu, I feel that they're not as reliable as you, so I need your help. What? You need my help? Hearing this, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and he pointed to his nose and asked. Yes, I do have the idea of borrowing your strength. Bai Fei said, and don't worry, I'll definitely give you enough benefits. I'm looking forward to what benefits you can give me, that will tempt I. Xiao Hua laughed. Before you make a decision, before you swear a blood oath to pledge your loyalty to me, I can't easily reveal this benefit. Bai Fei said in all seriousness, however, fellow Taoist, don't worry. Regardless of whether you decide or not, I can hand these 3 jade slips over to you first. After saying that, Bai Fei took out 2 jade slips and handed them over to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua reached out his hand and took a look. Then, he shook his head and said, I can't take these 3 jade slips. As he spoke, he returned the 3 jade slips to Bai Fei. Bai Fei smiled and asked, what do you mean, fellow Taoist? Nothing else. Xiao Hua said with a smile, if I do not intend to go, then wouldn't I be able to find this cultivation technique jade slip anywhere? If I decide to go and arrive at the lost place, wouldn't this jade slip still belong to I? I have no reason to take this item now. Do I still have to consider whether to go or not? Fellow Taoist is right. Bai Fei laughed and was about to take back the jade slip. But at this time, Xiaohua probed again. Of course, if fellow Taoist Bai is willing to sell the nascent soul cultivation technique to I for the price of 10 top-grade crystals, I will also be very happy. Of course. Bai Fei did not hesitate to give a jade slip to Xiaohua and took 10 top-grade crystals from Xiaohua's hand. Xiaohua happily received the jade slip and said with cupped hands, I will take my leave. After I consider it, I will tell fellow Taoist Bai. Okay, I will wait for the good news. Bai Fei stood up and said with a smile. After Xiaohua left the quiet room, Bai Fei opened the restriction and could not help but ask, Xiao Yu, what do you think of this Taoist master Xiao? This guy is very cunning. Xiao Yu's voice sounded, and he is also very cautious. He is obviously moved, but he still does not want to be controlled by you. I am not afraid of him being cunning, nor am I afraid of him not going after taking the cultivation technique. Bai Fei said with a smile, I understand the situation of a loose cultivator. In the Yilin continent, there are too few loose cultivators who can stand out. No matter how much he cultivates, it is not good for him to stand out. But when he reaches the Dawn Rain continent, it will be different. The moment he appears, he will be a strong cultivator. He will like that feeling. Moreover, when I give him enough benefits, how can he not bow his head? Master, don't think too much. Xiao Yu reminded, let's see if he goes or not first. He will go. He will definitely go. Bai Fei did not doubt his own vision and replied with certainty. Of course, Xiaohua, who returned to the quiet room, also threw the jade slip in his hand with interest and said with a smile, why do you need to convince me? I will definitely go to the lost land. However, I did not expect that you would actually want to recruit me. Moreover, the cultivation technique you gave me is actually incomplete. You're too scheming, aren't you? When I reach the Dawn Rain continent, if I want to cultivate without a complete cultivation technique, won't I still have to rely on you? You are so sure that I will not find a complete cultivation technique in the Heaven Alliance? Forget it, let's not think about this. After Xiaohua laughed, he sat down cross-legged and thought to himself, I will take advantage of these few days to make up for the last primordial spirit cultivation technique. Bai Fei and Xiaohua each had their own plans. After the beautiful beauty Yu entered the quiet room, she also stood in the middle of the empty quiet room and did not speak for a long time. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Beauty Yu's figure suddenly moved. Under her snow-white clothes, a thick black aura surged out with a whoosh. This black aura gradually enveloped her graceful body. Crack, crack, crack. A sound like an eggshell cracking sounded. In the black aura, the lines that attracted the attention of countless male cultivators broke and caved in. Then, a silver-white wolf darted out of the black aura. Damn it! The wolf sprang out, stretched lazily, and spoke the language of the 10,000 demon realm. This human body is really too burdensome. If it wasn't for the fact that I was worried that my true appearance would be seen through by the human cultivators, I wouldn't have bothered to make these disgusting things. Sigh, the humans in this heaven realm are really too powerful. Although I haven't seen many people as powerful as His Honor in these years, just these human cultivators almost saw through my disguise. If I meet their so-called Heaven Alliance Master or Tao Alliance Master, will they find out that I'm not a human at a glance? Could it be that their strength has reached the great saint realm of my 10,000 demon realm? His Honor often said that although the human race's physical body is weak, they are good at using external objects. Their cultivation speed is much faster than the demon race's. Could it be that there are more great sages of the human race in this Tao realm than in the 10,000 demon realm? Damn it, I'm scared just thinking about it. Why did I dare to enter the heaven realm that day? Speaking of this, the wolf cub rolled on the ground a few times without any posture, as if it was stretching its legs. After a while, it strolled to the front of the jade table and looked at the spirit fruit on it with disdain, whispering, "What kind of spirit fruit is this? It has no taste at all. I don't know why these humans like it so much." Sigh, His Honor, it's been a few hundred years. When will His Honor come and pick me up? However, speaking of this, the wolf cub trembled again and lay down on the futon, not daring to talk to itself anymore. Instead, it thought to itself, "Let's not rush and let His Honor come and pick me up. If I can't complete His Honor's task, even if His Honor comes, I won't dare to go back." Moreover, His Honor vaguely revealed that this little fox is very important. It seems that there are other great saints who want to capture her. However, it's strange. With His Honor's Snow Wolf King identity, why would he be afraid of other great saints? Could it be the two great saints of the Origin clan? If it's the two great saints of the Origin clan, why don't they do it? Why must the Wolf clan's great saint do it? Damn it, this is so unfair. If it wasn't for this task, how could I have been stranded in the 10,000 demon realm for hundreds of years? It's a pity that these hundreds of years have been wasted in the Tao's celestial realm. The power of the stars and moon here is far inferior to that of the 10,000 demon realm. Moreover, under the rule of the humans, I dare not draw more power of the stars down. I remember that once I met a Mahayana cultivator. If it wasn't for my cleverness and the secret technique that His Honor bestowed upon me, I'm afraid I would have become his wolfskin vest. Could it be that this hateful little fox is really in the Lost Land? In these hundreds of years, I've traveled all over the Lin continent and used the Wolf Clan's secret technique countless times. However, I've never found any trace of her. It seems that I can only go there and take a look. But the problem was, how could she have fallen in that place? When His Honor and I caught up with her in the Origin Grotto Heaven, she had just entered the spatial tunnel. How could there be such a huge gap in just half a cup of tea's time? Besides, the Wuming Mountain Range's reputation is not for nothing. I don't know how the humans feel. I've just approached the depths of the mountain range and haven't seen any teleportation tunnel yet. The terrifying aura of the soul beasts in there is enough to make my heart jump out of my chest. How could I dare to take the risk? If it wasn't for this operation by the Immortal Alliance, I really wouldn't know what to do. Who cares? I'll just follow behind these humans and use the teleportation tunnel to pass through the Wuming Mountain Range. What does it have to do with me if they want to pass down their orthodoxies and cultivation techniques? I just need to find the little fox's trace. Thinking of this, the silver wolf suddenly turned over and stood up from the futon. He looked in the direction of the quiet room with a trace of doubt on his face. He thought to himself, the question is, are the human cultivators going to the abandoned land really only in the golden core and nascent soul stages? Why do I feel that the human cultivator called Taoist Master Shao is a little strange? Although his strength is only at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, he has a familiar demonic aura on his body. Although this aura is very faint, but with the Supreme One's secret technique and my demonic instincts, I can still recognize it. Could it be that this Taoist Master Shao is also a demonic incarnation like me? But, if he is a demonic incarnation, why isn't he afraid of being seen through by the humans? Oh, I understand now. He might have a strong demonic bloodline and cultivated the secret technique of my demonic race according to this bloodline. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and... By the time Taoist Yuan Kong brought Xiao Hua and the others to the deck of the flying ship, all the cultivators had already gathered, filling the deck to the brim. Xiao Hua and the others stood at the very back. Taoist Yuan Kong wanted to move closer, but since all the cultivators were standing still, he was too embarrassed to move. Xiao Hua didn't look at the crowd. Instead, he looked outside the airship. At this time, the flying ship had already activated its defensive formation. Beyond the faint green light, there was a grayish-yellow sky. In the sky, there were hurricanes that blotted out the sun and the moon. Numerous fist-sized vortexes were like eyes in the sky, staring at the flying ship from afar. Where is this? Xiao Hua was a little puzzled. Although he could see through the array with his naked eyes without using his spiritual force, he could also see that the area within a radius of a few miles was filled with whirlpools. However, he still did not know where he was in the Yilin continent. After saying that, Du Peng really saluted all around. At this moment, the cultivators on the flying boat could no longer stand still. Most of the cultivators recruited by Defeat You Immortal Alliance were Yuanian cultivators, and 30% of them were Jindan cultivators. Du Peng was a Fenshin cultivator, their senior. When had they ever seen a Fenshin cultivator salute them? The group of cultivators all hurriedly returned the salute. Senior is too polite. To be able to contribute to Defeat You Immortal Alliance, to be able to contribute to our Heaven Alliance, it is our duty and our fortune. Good. Du Peng stood up and looked around. After looking around, he sighed and said, with your sincerity, why would our Dao sect be afraid of the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? You are the hope of our Heaven Alliance, and also the backbone of our Heaven Alliance. This old man is not as good as you. When the cultivators heard this, their backs straightened, as if they had eaten a spiritual pill. Facing your imposing manner, this old man can't even say a single word that I had prepared long ago. Du Peng shouted again, because those words are nothing compared to your courage to move forward. They are just dust. This old man might as well be lazy and not say any polite words. Disciples. Yes. The group of Jindan cultivators and Foundation establishment cultivators guarding the flying ship responded in unison. Present the thank you gift of Defeat You Immortal Alliance to the seniors. Du Peng waved his hand and said, also let them see the sincerity of our Defeat You Immortal Alliance. We can't let them work for our Defeat You Immortal Alliance and our Heaven Alliance empty-handed. Yes. The group of disciples responded, took the utensils, and flew to various places according to the arranged order. Every time they flew in front of a cultivator, they would take out a storage ring from the utensils and send it to the cultivator's eyes. Xiao Hua and the others were the last, but the cultivators who had taken the storage rings earlier all cried out in surprise when they used their divine senses to take a look. Ah? Hee hee. When the rest of the cultivators who had not taken the storage rings heard the exclamations, how could they not know that the things in the storage rings were abundant? Each of them revealed a smile. Their courage to take the lead had long disappeared, leaving behind only greed. By the time Xiao Hua obtained the storage ring, all the cultivators on the flying ship had already probed the storage ring with their divine senses and were counting the things inside. Although Xiao Hua didn't care, he couldn't help but be a little surprised when he probed the storage ring with his divine sense. The number of medicinal pills, crystal stones, and so on inside was indeed beyond his expectations. Hee hee, the aura of this Du Peng hidden in his body seems very familiar. I'm afraid he's the human who was possessed by that so-called demon general Lord Ji Peng. This guy hid extremely well, and it seems like he's actually the special envoy of Defeat You Immortal Alliance. He's doing much better than this demon general by my side. Xiao Hua pretended to look at the storage rings and glanced at Zhuang Chen from the corner of his eyes, thinking curiously, I wonder what's the relationship between this demon general and Ji Peng. Why didn't he acknowledge Ji Peng? Could it be that his plans are different from Ji Peng's? Interesting. Could it be that the demon realm is similar to the human realm, with different powers? Or could it be that these demons left behind in the Yilin continent are not the subordinates of the same demon lord? If that's the case, this Xiao can't act rashly and alert the enemy. Let's wait and see what exactly they plan to do. Who knows, we might even be able to bait a great demon. After a while, seeing that everyone was satisfied with the storage rings, Du Peng opened his mouth and said, I'm sure that when everyone came here, you've already heard from my Immortal Alliance disciples that not all fellow Taoists can pass the selection and obtain the qualifications to enter the Lost Lands. This old man also made them promise to all of you that regardless of whether you pass or not, you will receive rewards from my immortal alliance. This storage ring is the fulfillment of this old man's promise to all of you. Many thanks, Lord Special Envoy. Everyone shouted excitedly. But then, Dupeng's tones suddenly changed, and a wave of cold air enveloped the entire flying boat. However, this old man will also say the ugly words first. Since my defeat you Immortal Alliance has treated all of you generously, you can't let my defeat you Immortal Alliance down. This old man doesn't wish for anyone to not put in effort during the selection and try to slack off, only wanting to take the storage rings and use the excuse of not being able to pass the selection to escape to the Lost Lands. As long as this old man discovers such a situation, I will definitely not ask a single word and will immediately kill them. There was no lack of cultivators who had such thoughts. At this moment, after hearing Dupeng's words, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Of course, deterrence was deterrence, there were definitely cultivators who did things their own way. It was up to Dupeng to find out what method he had. Dupeng raised his hand and pointed outside the flying boat, and said, "Everyone, take a look, where is this?" Many cultivators were like Xiaohua, looking outside as soon as they reached the deck, but other than the whirlpool, they couldn't see anything else. At this moment, hearing Dupeng's question, the entire place was silent for a moment, and no one answered. After half a cup of tea's time, a cultivator hesitantly replied, "Senior, may I ask if this is the Heaven Wind Forbidden Area?" Yes, this is the Heaven Wind Forbidden Area." As soon as this cultivator spoke, a dozen cultivators immediately woke up and exclaimed, "Other than the Heaven Wind Forbidden Area, where would my Yi-Lin continent have such a strange hurricane? Where would there be so many heaven wind whirlpools?" Dupeng clapped his hands and said, not bad, I didn't expect that there would be such a knowledgeable person among you. After hearing this answer, I have some confidence in this selection." With that, Dupeng pointed to the side of the flying boat and said, "In fact, this is not the real Heaven Wind Forbidden Area, but just a corner of the southeastern edge of the Forbidden Area. I believe that all of you know that the Heaven Wind Forbidden Area is not the Tao Integration Stage, Mahayana Stage, and Tribulation Stage seniors of the Heavenly Alliance, who can't enter at will. If we go 100 miles deeper, not to mention our physical bodies, even this flying boat will be torn apart by the heaven wind. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it as a reward, and I've already received the news, so why aren't there any movements from East Reed Devil Region and West/Devil Region? Could it be that they did not care about the Lost Land? Or had they already infiltrated the envoy's flying boat? I remember that a long time ago, there was a demon general in the West-slaying demon region who leaked a piece of news. They seemed to have found the remains of a demon lord who had fallen in the Yi-Lin continent. They were preparing to find this remains. Could it be that they have already started to move? That's why they don't care about the Lost Lands? You want to revive the demon sovereign? The demons in the West-slaying demon region are really indulging in wild fantasies. On the Yi-Lin continent, there are as many human cultivators in the Tao Alliance and Heaven Alliance as there are stars in the sky. Even if the demon lord is revived, wouldn't he still be killed by the human race? Why don't we let my Lord Demon King? When Zhuangqin thought of this, he suddenly laughed. Damn it, they don't want to revive the demon lord. They're just afraid that the demons in the 3 demon regions will devour their demon lord. They're preparing to hide the remains of the demon lord. They're thinking too much. That's the body of a demon lord we're talking about. Of all the demons we've left behind in the Yi-Lin continent, the strongest is only a demon king. Using the power of a demon king to devour a demon lord, they're really tired of living. Unless a demon emperor comes, then there's no way they can devour it. Of course, if it's the original body of the demon lord. Damn it, that's right, what is the original body of the demon lord? If it's the same as me, wouldn't I be able to reach the heavens in a single step? No, I must use this chance to find out. Even if I can't devour it completely, getting a piece of it is still a great opportunity. Those demon bastards from the Eastern Ting demon region must have joined forces with the demons from the Western Slaying demon region. One of them was the demon race's Silver Wolf, who received orders from the great sage Snow Wolf King to go to the Dawn Rain continent to find the little fox. The other was the demon race's demon general, who received orders from the demon world's demon king to go to the Dawn Rain continent to find out the layout of the northern Jian demon region. The two of them had very different goals from the Dao sect's purpose in going to the Lost Lands. Their performance was the most normal, thinking and scheming. But compared to the demon race's Silver Wolf and the demon race's Zhuang Chen, Jinren Yuan Kong, who should be going to the Lost Lands, seemed to be the most abnormal. He sat cross-legged behind the jade table, leisurely shaking his head. Sometimes he waved his hand and picked up a spirit fruit, sometimes he waved his hand and a cup of spirit wine fell into his hand. He raised his head and drank it all in one gulp. His mouth even sang a strange little song. It seemed that he was temporarily the leader of the 5 people, and was quite satisfied. I really don't know, if one day he knew that his subordinates were actually human great sages, would he still be able to sit on the fishing platform like this? There was no need to talk about the other meditation rooms in detail. During the past 3 days, quite a number of cultivators had come over. No one knew what kind of story each cultivator had behind their backs. However, time didn't care about this, it always flowed forward like water. In the early morning of the 3rd day, there was a sound of a bugle horn, followed by a roar that soared into the sky. The heaven and earth spirit chi in the vicinity of 100 miles around the flying boat turned into a hurricane and rushed into the flying boat. Layers of clouds overflowed from the body of the flying boat, and rays of multicolored light flashed like water. Whoosh! The huge flying boat first trembled slowly, and a moment later, it turned into a huge light shadow in the air and rushed into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Oh! Already set off? Xiao Hua was recording the cultivation method when his eyes suddenly opened. Although there was no movement in the quiet room, the activation of the flying boat still caused Xiao Hua to feel something. I have to speed up. Xiao Hua only opened his eyes for a moment before closing them immediately. He thought to himself, after this selection, I will immediately head to the Wumeng mountain range. I have to leave the cultivation method to the Heaven Alliance before I reach the Wumeng mountain range. Xiao Hua still underestimated the size of the Yilan continent. The flying boat actually took several months. Not only did Xiao Hua finish modifying the primordial spirit integration cultivation method, he also worked together with the Thunderbolt Immortal to deduce the nascent soul cultivation method and primordial spirit cultivation method from beginning to end, correcting some small flaws in it. After doing all this, the Thunderbolt Immortal threw the 2 cultivation methods to the Shenhua continent's fortune gate and asked the disciples to copy the cultivation method into a jade slip. He then followed Xiao Hua into the quiet room and sat cross-legged in front of Xiao Hua. I heard that the Yilan continent is the most prosperous world of our Dao sect. Not only does it have the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance, but it also has the cultivation method of the 9 transformations golden core. I am very curious. The Dao Sovereign and the Dao Ancestor are related to the nascent soul cultivation method and primordial spirit cultivation method respectively. Then, which Dao Senior is related to the Dao sect's 9 transformations golden core? Do you want to take a look? Xiao Hua said with a smile that was not a smile. I am indeed curious. I want to see how the 9 transformations golden core is cultivated. The Thunderbolt Immortal nodded. But I am afraid of delaying your important matters. After all, the 3 continents are in an abyss of suffering, and we have already reached the final step. There is no reason for us to cause any trouble. You are right, fellow Daoist. Xiao Hua said with a bitter smile. I also think the same. I don't want to cause any more trouble. I just want to find a way to pass through the Wumeng mountain range. Otherwise, Why would I follow some nascent soul cultivator of the Yilan Immortal Alliance to gain experience? Moreover, why would I be in cahoots with the demon race and the demon race? At this point, Xiaohua said again, although I have never seen the cultivation method of the 9 transformations golden core, I have already deduced the cultivation method of the primordial spirit with fellow Taoist. In your opinion, what is the difference between the cultivation method of the primordial spirit of the Taoist sect and the 5 Qis unifications of the Confucian cultivators? To tell you the truth, fellow Taoist, the Thunderbolt Immortal said seriously, although I am not as proficient as fellow Taoist, I have also increased my knowledge of the Confucian cultivators. In I's opinion, not only are the names of the realms similar, but the cultivation methods are also inextricably linked. If the 5 Qis unifications is not referring to the cultivation method of the primordial spirit, then the primordial spirit cultivation method is referring to the 5 Qis unifications of the primordial spirit. Fellow Taoist, you are still lacking in confidence. Xiaohua said with a smile. In fact, you already know in your heart that the disappeared sage was obviously a doppelganger of the Taoist ancestor. The reason why the Taoist ancestor used his doppelganger to become a Confucian cultivator was to explore the mystery of the 5 Qis unifications of the primordial spirit. On the surface, that is indeed the case. The Thunderbolt Immortal did not hide his thoughts and replied, but I always feel that it is not so simple. Moreover, the cultivation methods have a long history. Learning from each other and adapting to the heaven and earth is the way of the king. Now that you and I have modified the primordial spirit and nascent soul cultivation methods, thousands of years later, this Yilan continent will definitely be dominated by this cultivation method. But who can deny that the cultivation method that we modified before is not an authentic cultivation method? Fellow Taoist is right. Xiaohua nodded his head in satisfaction. That's right, the ancient times, the Taoist ancestor and the Taoist ancestor, the nascent soul cultivation methods and primordial spirit cultivation methods have all been buried in the dust of time. It is really too difficult to find the truth. And that Golden Core 9 Revolutions cultivation method, if I am not wrong, it should be somewhat similar to the Buddhist sect's 9 Revolutions golden body, right? Fellow Taoists, none of you cultivate the 9 Revolutions golden body, so I am afraid that fellow Taoist does not need to look at it. If you have this time, fellow Taoist might as well comprehend the 5 Qis unifications of the primordial spirit. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.